Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto was raised by 3rd Hokage Danzo and married Sakura Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Konohagakure, Guy shouted enthusiastically. Home sweet home. Let's go in and get our friends enrolled. The team of Konoha shinobi shot forward at full speed, leaving the mercenaries behind to stare on with confusion. They walked forward with Yahiko at point. The other three, despite hiding it, they were rather scared. They always talked big about taking on Konoha and Danzo, but now that they were actually at the village's gates, it was a bit more nerve-wracking than they cared to admit. Just calm down, Yahiko whispered, turning his head back to the three young ones. You can't show fear, otherwise we may get more attention than we're already gonna get. Just breathe, and calm down. The three nodded, then swallowed a nervous lump down their throats as they stopped in front of the gates. Who are these people, Guy? One of the guard shinobi questioned. These are some friendly mercenaries I met outside of the village, Guy boasted. They wish to enter the Chunin exams. You know how Lord Danzo feels about. I vow for these mercs, Guy stated, his eyes hardening on the guards. They both looked to each other, then back at Guy before stepping aside. The Jonin spun around, smiling with a raised thumb. No problem at all. Just follow me and we'll get you and your boys signed in and registered. Thank you very much, Guy-san, Yahiko said, bowing his head slightly. I assure you though that you don't have to. Nonsense, you're guests, and I always tend to guests of Konoha. Guy moved forward with his students, Yahiko, and his team following behind them. Kakashi and Anko walked out of the Hokage's building, having just finished their report on the Kurosuke mission to Danzo. Both of their teams followed out shortly after. Anko spun around, walking backwards with a wide smirk on her face. All right team, who wants to go out and eat after a successful mission? Successful mission, Kakashi repeated, shaking his head with disbelief. Yeah, we got our payment, came back with half the weapons and supplies we were supposed to deliver to those Kurosuke goons, and nobody died. Sounds like a successful mission to me. What about those rogues you forgot to mention to Lord Danzo? They got away and could very well leak information that Konoha forces are in the land of. Yeah, Danzo sure is upset since he has half the world on his side, Anko muttered, waving her hand about dismissively. Way to tattle to him by the way. Team, not Kakashi who can sod off, team, who wants to go out to eat. My treat. Your treat, Zaku repeated. I'm there, Dosu exclaimed, raising his arm high in the air. Make that two, Zaku added with a smile. Sakura slowly moved her eyes towards Sasuke, trying to not make it obvious to her Uchiha crush. Zaku quickly grabbed the kunoichi's arm and lifted it up. Sakura's going too. Hey, the pink-haired kunoichi snapped, prying her arm away. Alright, let's head out. Anko turned then moved down the street. Dosu and Zaku grabbed Sakura by her wrists then dragged her away from her beloved Sasuke. Kakashi turned to his team, eyes and cold and hard as steel. Unfortunately for you, I'm not as nice of a sensei as she is. We're heading to the training grounds and we're going to practice every skill you three morons are capable of doing until nightfall. Understood. Yes, Kakashi-sensei, Hinata replied with a firm nod. Kakashi moved his gaze to Shino, who also nodded, and then to the brooding Sasuke who huffed with approval. Let's go. The masked Jonin turned and walked towards the training fields with his three students following closely behind him. Anko walked down the streets with a grin on her face as she hummed a cheery tune to herself. Dosu and Zaku were behind their sensei, talking about training exercises while Sakura sulked behind them. What if Sasuke-kun was doing something? I could have joined him and been on a date with him. If those two idiots didn't have to drag me along, I could be with Sasuke-kun right now. Earth to Sakura, Zaku's voice shouted through his cupped hands. The pink kunoichi jumped a bit and stared at her teammate in front of her with confusion. This is your best friend Zaku. Stop pouting. I'm not pouting, Sakura snapped. Yes you are, Zaku's voice echoed. I concur. Dosu's voice, also enhanced by cupping his hands, added. Sakura smacked the boy's hands away, glaring angrily at them. Whoa, someone is an angry kitty. Dosu, Sakura shouted, throwing a punch at the hunched boy's head. Whoa, the boy ducked and swerved to the side, narrowly avoiding Sakura's strike. Sakura hated Dosu and Zaku's nickname, Kitty. She had no idea where they got it from either, but it annoyed her to no end. Leave her alone Dosu, she's mad because she wanted to spend time with a jerk who pays no attention to her whatsoever rather than her only two friends in the entire village, Zaku stated. Sakura glared at Zaku, causing him to chuckle and move 2 steps ahead of Sakura. You jerks know I like him, the kunoichi snapped. And we know he doesn't even know you exist, Dosu replied. Sakura crossed her arms and huffed with annoyance. Come on, go for someone else. That Rock Lee guy likes you. Sakura and Zaku both made a noise of distaste, looking at Dosu with utter shock. Hey, at least he likes you and he realizes when you're around. He probably has her scent down too, Zaku said, jabbing Dosu with his elbow. He can smell Sakura-chan within a 4-mile radius. Dosu shook his head and laughed. I hate you both, Sakura seethed. What about Shino? Dosu continued. He shows less emotion and attention to anyone more than Sasuke does. Zaku threw his head back and laughed, slapping his knee once. Or that lazy ass Shikamaru. The two started laughing hysterically, unable to walk straight. Sakura sighed then walked down another street, away from her team. Anko stopped and snapped her head to the girl while Dosu and Zaku stopped laughing and looked on with confusion. Aw man. I'll talk to her, Zaku stated, chasing after the girl. The black-haired shinobi ran down the street then walked next to Sakura who was ignoring her. After a few steps of silence, Zaku put his hands in his pockets and looked to the sky. Wanna hit me? I want you and Dosu to shut up, Sakura snapped. We can do that, Zaku replied. Coming to eat with us? No, I'm going home. Oh come on. Zaku moved in front of Sakura, causing her to stop. After we've been teammates for how long, you still can't take a joke. Dosu and I are dickheads, you should know that by now. I want to go home, Sakura muttered. Zaku's shoulders slumped then he stepped aside as Sakura moved past him. Zaku rolled his head and groaned before walking back up to Dosu. Well, she hates us again. Dosu groaned and shook his head. Still wanna go eat? Free meal, duh. Dosu walked forward, catching up to his sensei that started walking as soon as Zaku came running back up. The black-haired shinobi sighed then caught up with Dosu. Sakura walked through the streets of Konoha, head lowered and mind elsewhere. Right now she just wanted to get home and go to sleep. Maybe she was overreacting, but she didn't care. Her teammates knew how much she liked Sasuke, and they know they crossed the line. Naruto was looking at everything around him. Never before had he been around so much of everything happening at once. It was exciting to an extent, but at the same time the Jinchuriki couldn't help but feel that someone was watching him. Maybe that was paranoia. The blonde smiled, enjoying all of the excitement it all as he turned his head. His eyes widened and jaw dropped as he saw a familiar pink-haired kunoichi walking in his direction. A blush formed across his face as he quickly turned his head away and stopped gapping, but kept his eyes on the beautiful young girl. She seemed upset. Naruto could tell that much, but even then she was so beautiful. Sakura brushed her hair behind her ear then looked up, just as someone popped up in front of her on one knee. Sakura groaned and rolled her eyes immediately seeing who it was. Sakura, my darling, my rose, Lee exclaimed loudly and nervously. Will you go on a date with me? Not now Lee, Sakura said, opening and closing her fists to control herself. Then how about tomorrow, or even tonight? I am available whenever you are Sakura. I'm in a bad mood, Lee. Sakura seethed, a vein popping out of her forehead. She was about ready to hit him if he said one more word. Perhaps I can bring up your spirits. With the power of Yo, Sakura pulled her arm back, but someone suddenly pulled Lee out of striking distance. The kunoichi gasped with shock, seeing an unfamiliar blonde with spiky and messy hair, blue eyes, and a foxy grin. Hey buddy, how about a foot race? Naruto asked with a nervous chuckle. You do not even know where we are going, Lee stated. I mean to the border and back, Naruto replied. Yes, that is a most worthy challenge. Alright, on your marks, get set, go. Lee shot off down the road, dirt flying up behind him while Naruto and the others stood and watched. Yes, go Lee, Guy shouted. Huh, wait, the Jonin turned around, seeing Naruto standing there. You're not chasing after him. I know, Naruto stated. Lee may be gone for a few days. No, Lee, wait up. Guy went chasing after Lee in the same fashion. Shikamaru sighed while Choji only chuckled. We just got done running to the gates, Shikamaru stated. Those two, I swear. Choji, go to the barbecue shake and get a table for you and me. I'll show these guys to the registration booth to get visitors passes. You got it, Choji exclaimed before running off. Sakura watched as Lee and Guy became two tiny dust specks in the distance before turning to the blonde who saved Lee from a beating. Thank you, Sakura said. Naruto turned his head with wide eyes. For getting Rock Lee away from me. And no problem, Naruto stuttered. I could tell you were about to knock his block off. Sakura cracked a small smirk before looking at Yahiko, Kiba, and Neji. So you all are visitors. Why yeah, we're here for the Chunin exams, Naruto stated. Maybe that's where you can knock Lee's block off. Sakura's smirk widened to a full smile. Naruto's blush widened, praying that the makeup Tsunade put on him wouldn't melt off. I'm Sakura, the kunoichi said. I'm our Ryu, Naruto replied, almost forgetting his alias. Well, I was just heading home. It was nice to meet you, Ryu. Bye, Shikamaru. The lazy genius grunted, then waved his hand uncaringly. Thank you again. Sakura smiled to Naruto before turning and walking off. Naruto watched her, his heart beating like a drum in his chest. Sakura smiled to herself before daring to look back once again at the blonde. Naruto's heart nearly back-flipped as he waved nervously to her. Sakura giggled, then waved back before turning back around. The moment was ruined when Kiba, aka Fang, pounced on the blonde, cackling like a madman. Ha! Dude, you're blushing so badly. And no, I'm not. Shut up, Fang. I wouldn't waste your time, Shikamaru stated. Kiba and Naruto turned their heads to the lazy boy with his hands in his pockets. She's completely in love with Sasuke Uchiha. Some people call him the Prince of Konoha, because of how Danzo treats him. He's a great shinobi and all for his age, but he acts like people are floor mats and hardly says more than 2 words to anyone not on his team. I hate people like that, Kiba growled. So arrogant. You're preaching to the choir, Shikamaru stated. Anyway, let's go. Right. Thank you, Shikamaru, Yahiko said. The genin took the lead with Yahiko following behind him. The orange-haired man couldn't help but turn around with a mocking smirk directed towards Naruto. The Jinchuriki scowled angrily as Yahiko turned back around while Neji and Kiba snickered quietly. Sakura couldn't stop smiling for some reason. She just met a complete stranger who made her smile in seconds flat. It didn't make sense. Even if he was a cute stranger, with a manly name, Sakura shook her head, trying to get the nonsense-filled thoughts out of her mind. The kunoichi got to her front door and sighed. Now she felt bad about ditching her team just because Zaku and Dosu were being jerks. But then again, if she hadn't left she would have never met Ryu. She shrugged, then opened the door and walked right on in. Sakura looked around, seeing no one in sight as she took her shoes off and shut the door. Sakura, a voice called out. Yeah, the kunoichi called back. A man poked his head out of the kitchen to confirm. The man had shoulder-length, light brown hair that was swept back, green eyes, stress lines on his face. Oh, you're home earlier than I thought you'd be. Doesn't your team usually train or eat after a mission or something? I decided to come home early, Uncle Higure. The man nodded with acknowledgement, then shot back into the kitchen. Sakura walked into the living room, then took a left to the kitchen. She stopped in the doorway, placing her hand over her mouth to keep from exploding with laughter. Her uncle turned around from the stove with a confused look on his face. What? He asked. Why are you wearing a pink apron? Sakura questioned. Because we didn't have any clean aprons. Sakura rolled her eyes, then walked through the kitchen into the laundry room. You don't know how to do laundry. Really? Hey, they didn't teach me that, ever. Sakura rolled her eyes, then started up the washing machine. It's not that hard. Warm water, soap, throw the laundry in, shut the lid, let it run, and you're done. Right, it's that easy. Last time I tried to do laundry, that damn thing made it halfway into the kitchen somehow. That's because all the weight was on one side, so when it spun it moved. Sakura laughed as she shook her head. What are you cooking anyway? It smells yummy. Well, at least I can do something right, Higure muttered. I'm making stir-fry vegetables with optional chunks of pork. I didn't know if you were a vegetarian this week or not. Sakura rolled her eyes, then started throwing aprons into the washing machine. That was just a temporary thing, Sakura exclaimed. Yeah, it was on and off again for nearly a full year. So you just have vegetables and pork going? I'm making noodles, Higure replied defensively. Noodles are fine, right? Sakura leaned back to the doorway and nodded with a look of, duh, on her face. Higure rolled his eyes, then stirred the vegetables around on the skillet. So why did you come home early? Teammates were being jerks, Sakura replied, pouring the soap in before closing the lid. What did they do this time? Call you kitty? No. Higure flinched, then looked to the laundry room, seeing Sakura clutching the sides of the doorway and breathing heavily. Her uncle also knew that she hated the name, and she was starting to detest the word now too. Well, Sakura turned back to the laundry room, still standing in the doorway. Yeah, they did call me that once, but that's not why I left. Higure groaned, shoulders slumping over. Sakura stopped, then turned her head around with confusion. Nope. I'm not going to say anything, Higure told himself. Just stay quiet. Sakura then groaned and her shoulders slumped down. She knew Higure knew exactly what it was about. She decided to not say anything and remain in a silent, yet dignified rage. Sakura started throwing the dirty clothes on the floor into a hamper so that there would be room to walk around. So, how did the mission go? It went over all right, Sakura stated. There were 3 masked people that were spying on us though. They got away though, and no one was really hurt. Except Kakashi's pride, that is, Higure huffed with a smirk on his face. He's most likely punishing his team right now. Well, just be thankful that you don't have him for a sensei, Higure called out. So if Zaku and Dosu made you mad, then why aren't you still angry? Did you punch someone on your way here? Almost, Sakura called back with a smile on her face. Higure shifted his eyes over briefly to the laundry room, hearing the smile in Sakura's tone. I bumped into Lee on the way here. And yet you're in a good mood. I met this one guy who saved Lee, then made him run to the border of the land of fire. Higure let out a brief laugh at the thought. Who made him do that? Might guy? Nope. Some other boy named Ryu. He had a team with him and they were here for the Chunin exams. What village were they from? Sakura stopped for a moment to think. I don't remember seeing a headband anywhere on them actually. Most likely mercenaries, Higure told her. Weird how one of them helped Lee. Usually they only look out for number 1. At least they have in my experience. Well, this one was nice, Sakura said, still smiling. Sounds like someone has a little thing for Mr. Young Mercenary, Higure replied with a sing-song voice. Sakura grinned and blushed a bit. She was thankful there was a wall between her and her uncle. No, I don't, the kunoichi replied, still smiling. Yeah, huh, sure, that's exactly why you don't sound like a schoolgirl right now. Shut up, you're a schoolgirl. Higure rolled his eyes, then took the skillet off the stove and put it on pot holders. Food is almost ready. Alright, let me go change first. Sakura quickly ran out of the kitchen, her uncle watching her with a smile. Maybe she has a chance not to fall for that Sasuke jerk. Sakura ran upstairs and closed the door to her room so she could change. Yahiko and his team walked out of the registration booth with Shikamaru, each of the rogues looking at their new ids curiously. Alright, well, I've got to go hang out with Choji. I hope you enjoy your stay, make sure to not get in trouble, all that stuff. Thank you very much, Shikamaru-kun, Yahiko said with a slight bow. Thank him. Thanks, the three students replied with a wave. Yahiko rolled his eyes and groaned. They couldn't even show respect towards their own age group. Shikamaru simply chuckled, then walked off with another wave. So what now? Do we train and then kick some Konoha butt? Naruto shouted. The outburst caused his entire team, Yahiko included, to pounce him, all trying to cover his mouth. What part of undercover is hard for you to understand? Yahiko hissed. We're grabbing a hotel, although you're lucky we don't end up skinned and hung up in the city to be put on display. Yahiko got up and dusted himself off while Neji and Kiba kept their grip on Naruto's arm, and each one having a hand over the blonde's mouth. The group moved nervously through the streets, watching everyone who walked past them carefully. In a few moments, the team got to a hotel and booked one large suite with 4 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, and a small living room. Naruto looked around with wide eyes at how simply large the entire area was. How do we have money to afford this? Naruto questioned. Don't worry about the money. Just try to get as much information during the Chunin exams as possible, Yahiko sniped. I've had enough of Konoha's filth around me for one day. I'll say, most of the shinobi out there reek of bloodshed, Kiba stated, wrinkling his nose. We should all get some rest, Neji suggested. We're all a bit tense and tired. Some time in an actual bed might do all of us some good. Yahiko and Kiba nodded in approval, then went to their rooms. Neji looked over to Naruto, who seemed focused on something else. What's wrong, Naruto? Nothing, the blonde replied. Neji examined the boy for a moment in silence. Naruto finally sighed, then turned his head to Neji slowly. You can't tell Kiba or Yahiko, okay? Neji nodded once. I can't stop thinking about that girl. You're joking, Neji said with a sarcastic tone. You were acting like a total idiot while you were around her. It's not surprising that you'd still be thinking about her less than an hour from when you met her. But she's from Konoha, it would never work out right. That's what heartbreak is, Neji sighed. Sorry, but this isn't a fairy tale, Uzumaki. You should head to sleep. I promise you'll completely forget about it once you wake up. Naruto nodded as Neji walked into his room. The blonde sighed, then walked into the last room and shut the door. Higure was washing the dishes while Sakura was putting the leftovers away. So, did I tell you Anko-sensei put us in the Chunin exams? Higure's head snapped up, then slowly turned to his niece. No, you didn't. Oh, Sakura blinked, unsure of what to say next. Surprise. Sakura quickly threw the food in the fridge, then bolted for the door. Wait, Higure shouted. Sakura froze outside of the doorway as her uncle walked up to her. Why are you waiting until a week before the exams to tell me? I didn't want you to worry. Sakura let out a weak, nervous giggle. Higure's eyes narrowed for a moment before he turned and headed back into the kitchen. Sakura's shoulders slumped down as her uncle went back to the dishes. Usually his silence meant that Higure was plotting something, or at least burning with rage inside. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I promise I'll be safe. I have Zaku and Dosu with me, and you know they won't let anything bad happen. Higure remained silent, causing Sakura to throw her head back with frustration. Fine. Be that way, I'll be in my room. Sakura spun around, then stormed to her bedroom and slammed the door. The kunoichi grumbled as she walked over to her bed and lied down. She glared at empty space before looking to her wall. Her room was painted yellow on 3 walls and the back wall was a light green which matched her eyes. She had a desk with a lamp on it as well as a few papers and writing utensils. Above her desk, hanging from the wall, was a calendar with a giant red circle around tomorrow. Sakura's eyes softened a bit, knowing fully what tomorrow was. She sighed, then rolled over on her other side, staring out the window as the sun began to set. She closed her eyes and decided to get some sleep. Kakashi stood across from his students, eyes hardened and arms crossed over his chest. The 3 genin were dirtied and bruised up a bit. They had been training for the entire second half of the day, and were about ready to collapse. Kakashi shifted his eyes to the sun, then back to his students. If he forced Danzo's prized Uchiha any further, there could be consequences to pay. That's enough, Kakashi stated. You all can go home now. The masked Jonin turned around, took a few steps, then vanished. Shino let out a sigh, then brushed himself off, straightened up and placed his hands in his pockets. Without another word, the silent boy walked off. Hinata scowled angrily, slapping the dirt off her legs angrily. This is such bullshit, she shouted. You're the last of the Uchiha, and I'm the heiress of the Hyuga clan. He can't just treat us like shit and then expect to just walk away. As long as he's kissing Danzo's ass he can, Sasuke stated. The young Uchiha turned his head to perhaps the only person in the entire village he could be considered friends with. Hinata had always been short-tempered and foul-mouthed around those she felt most comfortable with. Others who were on the higher end of the food chain, such as Danzo, or her father, she was always a kind, well-behaved girl who gave a charming and deceiving smile. Due to her high status as clan heiress, many people didn't dare to approach her, and those who did usually got eaten alive. Many girls attempted to befriend her due to her close relationship with Sasuke, and all of the girls were jealous of Hinata for the same reason. The only reason Sasuke tolerated Hinata was because she wasn't a shrieking banshee of a girl, and Hinata tolerated Sasuke because of his status as the last of the Uchiha clan and the fact that Danzo focused on him more than any other genin. Stupid Kakashi, Hinata muttered, crossing her arms in a fuss. Can't you say anything to Danzo about telling Kakashi to pull that stick out of his rear? Kakashi pushes us to be the best we can be. Sasuke snapped his head to Hinata, eyes hard as steel. That's why your father allowed you to be trained by anyone besides himself. That's why we have one of the best Jonin in Konoha as our sensei. Hinata scoffed, then turned her head away. Granted, they were as close as they allowed one another, but sometimes Sasuke's arrogance irritated Hinata. Whatever, I'm heading home. Hinata walked off while Sasuke huffed, then walked the other way. Hours passed and the village of Konoha was all but asleep, with only a few people walking through the streets in the dead of night. A few Anbu patrolled the city in the cover of darkness just as a precaution that Danzo ordered. With the Chunin exams coming up, one couldn't be too careful. It was nearing morning as light tried desperately to break through the dark clouds hovering over Konoha. Sakura woke up at dusk, got dressed in her ninja attire and snuck out while her uncle still snoozed soundly. Naruto was tossing and turning in his bed. He'd been unable to sleep through half of the night. He couldn't stop thinking about the pink-haired kunoichi that tormented him every waking hour since he'd seen her. Naruto sat up and growled angrily, ruffling his hair in some vain attempt to get the thoughts out of his mind. He looked outside and noticed that the morning had already begun. Naruto sighed, then stood up and started getting dressed. Yahiko would be pissed if he found out, but there was nothing else Naruto could do. He decided to take a walk through the village of Konoha. In the streets, Naruto tried to be as inconspicuous as possible, but made it a bit harder for himself, constantly looking over his shoulder and looking at all the dead space around him. Luckily, he didn't think there was anyone watching him, Or at least he hoped not. A loud crashing sound was heard, causing Naruto to shriek with fright and bolt through the nearest alleyway. A cat on the opposite side of the street stood next to a knocked-over garbage can and meowed to itself. Naruto stopped, placing his hands on his knees, then panted heavily, unsure of where he was at this point. He looked around for a moment before seeing a sign that hung overhead. The sign read, Konoha Memorial Cemetery. Naruto blinked a few times before looking over his shoulder. Just how far had he ran? The blonde straightened up and started walking away. Still, Naruto couldn't fight the curiosity to look into the cemetery, seeing countless tombstones with all sorts of different names carved in. The young Uzumaki stopped when he saw a small red ball sitting in the middle of the cemetery. Naruto looked around to see if anyone else was around, then jumped over the fence. He landed quietly, then snuck up quietly, tombstone to tombstone until he got closer to the red ball. As he moved closer, he heard a quiet muttering from the ball of a person. Naruto's eyes widened upon seeing a familiar head of pink hair blowing in the breeze. Sakura had knelt in front of a pair of tombstones, tears running down her face. The tombstone on the left read, Satoru Teki, and the one on the right read, Seiki Haruno Teki. So the Chunin exams are coming up, Sakura said. Uncle Higure freaked out as usual, but there's really nothing he can do about it, right? Sakura wiped the tears from her eyes, then sighed. He's still a great caretaker though. Just a little overprotective sometimes. Naruto's eyes softened a bit. He felt as though he should leave out of respect. The boy turned and took one step forward, crunching a few dead leaves under his foot. Naruto flinched, then spun around just as Sakura did, the two meeting eye to eye. Sakura blinked with confusion and tilted her head while Naruto waved nervously. Ryu, what are you doing here? I was just walking through the village and I saw you here. I swear I didn't know it was you, Sakura-chan. The pink-haired kunoichi couldn't help the urge to smile as a faint blush crept across her face. Sakura-chan Sakura stood up, brushing off her legs as she turned to Naruto. It's alright, I'm just visiting my parents. Naruto lowered his head, feeling ashamed that he interrupted her. I'm really sorry, I didn't know you were visiting your parents. It's alright, Sakura said, placing her hands behind her back. I visit them at least once every month. There's this one spot outside the village that has very pretty flowers. I sometimes go there and pick some to place on their graves. I'm very sorry. When did they die? My mother died after childbirth, Sakura replied with a small shrug. Naruto noticed the sadness in her eyes as she said this. And my father was killed before I was born. Naruto lowered his head a bit. They were both shinobi for the village, but my mom had to retire after she became pregnant. Dad had to downgrade most of his missions to stay closer to home more often. I'm surprised Danzo would let him, Naruto murmured. The blonde's widened slightly before he pressed his mouth into a tight line and looked up to a confused Sakura nervously. I mean I've heard some things about how Danzo runs the village and I didn't think he'd be so kind. Do you know how good of a shinobi your dad was? He was fairly good from what I hear. He was apparently the Kakashi Hatake of his time. Wow, Naruto stated with a surprised nod. What about your mom? She was better than my dad. Naruto smirked as he folded his arms over his chest. She had perfect chakra control, which I guess I inherited. She was one of the best kunoichi in Konoha during her time. Sakura shook her head, brushing a strand of hair back into place. I'm sorry, I must be making you feel really awkward. No, you're not. Sakura crossed her arms and gave a questioning smirk. Alright, maybe a little bit, the pink-haired girl giggled a bit before moving her hands back behind her back. Okay, why am I opening up to a complete stranger? This is so not me. Cha, it's because he's hot. Sakura mentally groaned. Not inner Sakura, not now at least. Well, I'll leave you alone with your parents, Naruto finally said. The boy turned around to leave. Wait, Sakura called. Naruto froze, then turned back around with a confused look on his face. Would you maybe want to get together later? I could show you all the cool spots in the village, and then you could show off to your teammates. Naruto grew a bit nervous and shuffled a bit. Why you mean like a DDD date? Sakura placed her hand over her mouth as she giggled. No. More like me showing a guy, who seems nice, his way around a village he's never been to before. Oh okay, yeah sure. Alright, around 3-ish maybe. That works, Naruto replied with an eager nod. See you at 3-ish then. Naruto grinned, then began to walk away. Bye Ryu. Bye Sakura-chan, Naruto said as he turned back around to wave. Sakura gave a brief wave back as Ryu jumped over the fence, then strode off down the road. So, Sakura spun back around on her heel, then knelt down in front of her parents' tombstones. I suppose I have some explaining to do. That's a boy I met yesterday, his name is Ryu. He saved Rock Lee, that boy I told you is really annoying but likes me. He saved him from a beating yesterday because my teammates were being jerks. You remember Zaku and Dosu, right? We visited you once, remember? But yeah, Ryu seems really nice, doesn't he? Sakura smiled, then knelt back down. She placed her hands together and started giving a little pray for her parents. After a few moments of silence, Sakura jumped as she felt a firm hand on her shoulder. She looked up, seeing her uncle standing over her, eyes focused on the tombstones. Sakura stared up at him for a moment, expecting him to say something about her being up so early and sneaking out of the house. Instead, he just stood there, staring at the tombstones. Finally, Sakura decided to speak first. How long have you been there? I just got here, Higure replied. I did some thinking about the Chunin exams. Sakura sighed, sensing a lecture on be safe, and don't do anything stupid, and so on in that fashion. I'm going to help you. The Kunoichi whirled her head around, eyes widened with shock. You what? Well, the Chunin exams are life-threatening even to those who are ready for it. I figure I could train you a bit, so then maybe I'd have a niece by the end of it all. So wait, Sakura said, standing up and facing her uncle. You're going to help me train for the Chunin exams? Well, I could whine and complain and give you a lecture, but you'd just do it anyway. Besides, I've been out of the game too long. I go for a test run to make sure everything works correctly. Yeah, fighting your 13-year-old niece who's a genin will surely reignite your flames of youth. Higure smirked, then looked down at Sakura, who returned a taunting smile. Are you two okay with this? Higure asked, pointing between Seiki and Satoru's tombstones. The breeze blew gently through the cemetery. I'll take that as a yes. Come on Sakura, we start training now. Right, Sakura replied with a wide smile and a firm nod. Higure turned and started walking away. Sakura took one step after him, then stopped. She turned around and gave a small wave goodbye to her parents' graves before following after her uncle. Sakura was knelt to the ground, fastening the straps on her shoes while her uncle stood across from her, arms crossed. Finally, the pink-haired Kunoichi stood up, a challenging smile on her face as her eyes met her uncle's matching green eyes. Higure took a small step back, relaxing his stance a bit. Alright, first and most important rule of the Chunin exams, survival, Higure stated. The Forest of Death has the term, death, in it for a reason. Many shinobi better than you have died in those woods. Sakura's face drooped, a slightly irritated look on her face. Thanks a lot for the support. Luckily for you, those shinobi didn't have me teaching them. In the Forest of Death, there are literally hundreds of poisonous plants and animals. The most obvious color for anything poisonous is the color purple, however, there are exceptions. I've set up a meeting with an old medical ninja friend of mine to go over that later. For now, we'll work on your overall abilities. Show me what you've got. Alright, Sakura replied, smirking once again. The Kunoichi stretched her arm across her body, eyes focused on her uncle, who remained completely relaxed. I hope you haven't gotten soft in your old age, uncle. I've definitely gotten soft, but that doesn't mean I can't put up a fight. Now attack. Without another word, Sakura shot forward in a red blur. Higure's eyes narrowed before he stepped back, avoiding Sakura's forward strike. The kunoichi scowled before throwing another punch, which her uncle also dodged. Two more lightning-fast strikes were dodged and the third was caught. Higure held Sakura by the wrist, holding her there as firmly as he could. Sakura growled before throwing her foot up at her uncle's head. Without taking his eyes off his niece, Higure jerked his head back, releasing Sakura's wrist. The young kunoichi spun around, then landed on her foot, standing across from her uncle in a battle-ready position. You need to think faster, Higure bluntly stated. If I were an enemy, I could have killed you in those few seconds I held your wrist. Block out the pain. You can cry after the battle. Sakura got angry, then shot forward. Higure was impressed with her speed, especially for her age. He ducked, swerved, and dodged all of Sakura's strikes. The pink-haired kunoichi got angrier, her strikes becoming faster and more vicious. Higure remained calm, his eyes unblinking as he moved nearly 2 seconds ahead of Sakura. Finally, Sakura had enough, then spun around, throwing both of her arms outward to use the striking shadow snake technique Anko taught her. However, the snakes shot out and struck nothing. Higure was gone. Sakura's eyes were wide with confusion as she looked around frantically. You can never take your eyes off your opponent, Higure's voice called out. Sakura spun around, seeing her uncle standing a ways away from her. That's the difference between life and death. Higure sighed, then started walking towards his niece. I have a lot to teach you. The first thing is always keep your eyes on your target. That is the most essential factor in battle. Alright, I'll do my best. Higure nodded once, then let his arms fall to his sides. I'm going to come at you. Your job is to go on the defensive and keep your eyes focused until you see a window of opportunity. I'm not going to hold back. Well, I'm not going to kill you or put you in any life-threatening situations, but other than that, no holding back. Sakura nodded, then readied herself. Higure closed his eyes, then sighed before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Sakura gasped with shock before ducking, barely seeing a flicker from the corner of her eye. Higure had thrown his elbow at the side of his niece's head, missing her by only a few strands of hair. Sakura threw an uppercut. Higure pulled his head back and caught her by the wrist. The kunoichi tried to pull away, but to no avail. I said to wait for your moment to strike. My eyes will still on you the whole time. Sorry, Uncle Higure. The older man sighed, then released Sakura, who took a big step away. It was weird, she'd never seen her uncle like this before. Usually he was just a sarcastic, lovable goofball, but now he was so serious. Well, judging from what I've seen, you're good on speed and reflexes. Now those will undoubtedly save your life in a variety of situations. What you really need is to learn to trust your instincts more, and think faster in a combat situation. Yes, sir. Sakura replied with a brisk nod. Higure tilted his head a bit with confusion. Now Sakura was perplexed as well. What's with the, sir, remark? I'm still your uncle, aren't I? Sakura's shoulders drooped and a relieved smile came across her face. Higure smiled back, then shifted back a bit. All right, ready. Ready, Sakura replied, dropping into a quick defensive stance. Higure quickly threw a kunai forward. Sakura pulled her head to the side, allowing the blade to pass through her silky smooth hair. She kept her eyes focused on her uncle, actually seeing him shoot forward this time instead of a blur. She watched carefully, then threw a punch forward just as her uncle blinked. Higure lowered his head, grabbed her niece by the wrist, moved around behind her, and began choking Sakura with her own arm. The kunoichi gasped in vain for air. She tried wrestling her arm away, but that was a wasted effort too. Finally, she lifted her leg up, stamped down on Higure's toes. Her uncle cried out briefly, and loosened his grip slightly. Sakura then elbowed Higure in the gut with all her might, causing him to fully release her. Higure fell on one knee after being elbowed in the stomach. Sakura jumped in the air, spun around and kicked her uncle across the face, knocking him to the ground. Sakura stared with wide eyes as her uncle slowly propped himself up on his hands. He rubbed his jaw, moaning with pain before looking up at his niece. I'd say that qualifies as break time, Higure stated. Sakura's posture slumped over as she rolled her eyes. Higure got up, still rubbing his now aching jaw. That's one hell of a kick you got, by the way. Are you okay? I didn't hurt you, did I, old man? Sakura punched her uncle's arm playfully, getting an annoyed glare in return. You know I hate it when you call me that, right? Sakura giggled as Higure started to walk away. The kunoichi tilted her head then followed her uncle. Where are we going? Sakura asked. This is a good excuse to see that medic friend of mine. Sakura moved in front of Higure, stopping him in his tracks. Are you sure you're okay? Yeah, I just don't want to give you another chance to hit me like that again, Higure replied. Sakura rolled her eyes as Higure continued past her. The kunoichi shook her head and shrugged to herself before following after him. The two walked through the streets of Konoha as the shops started opening and people started coming out. A few people greeted them as they made their way across the village to Konoha's medical center. A tall building, painted white that had countless windows all around it. The Haruno duo entered into the lobby where a blonde receptionist smiled at them. Hello, how may I help you two today? Is Rin here today? Higure asked. The nurse hummed to herself as she flipped through some papers. She is. Do you have an appointment with her? Higure nodded. The receptionist smiled then got up and walked into a back room. You set up an appointment with this girl? Sakura questioned. No, you set up an appointment with this woman, Higure corrected. Sakura's jaw dropped with shock at her uncle's statement. Higure smirked then turned as the door opened. The blonde receptionist walked out with a brown-haired woman with purple marks on her cheeks. Long time no see, Higure-san, the brunette said. Very long, Higure replied. This is my niece Sakura. I hope you don't mind teaching her some basics. Not at all, Rin answered with a smile. All right, Sakura, don't be a bother for Miss Rin, got it? Good lord, how old do you think I am? 5. Higure chuckled embarrassingly before turning and heading for the exit. Sakura took a deep breath before turning back to the new stranger before her and gave a small wave. Hello, I'm Sakura Haruno. It's my pleasure, I'm Rin. Follow me please. Sakura nodded then watched as Rin simply hopped over the desk in a swift movement. Sakura's eyes widened slightly. She didn't expect a grown woman to just hop over things so casually. Sakura shook her head a bit then followed Rin into the hospital. So how do you know my uncle? Sakura asked, watching as several nurses and doctors walked by them. We met on a mission together. A 3-man team was sent to infiltrate the Land of Lightning and report back. I was sent as the medical support. Who was the other member? Sakura asked. My boyfriend, Kakashi Hatake. Sakura nodded, lowering her eyes to process the information. Kakashi was an obvious choice due to his lightning affinity, as was Rin for her medical prowess. Sakura shook her head, mentally cursing herself. Why do I always have to analyze everything? All right, this is the room, Rin said, turning and opening the door to her right. Sakura entered, and was shocked. The room was humid, and full of countless plants of various color and shapes. It was a bit difficult to breathe, but Sakura managed. Rin closed the door then walked forward. This way. The two walked through the room. Sakura looked around, observing all of the unique and beautiful plants around her. There was a faint humming of the artificial light given off from. There were about 3 or 4 other doctors observing the plants, watering them and making sure they had enough light. Rin stopped and turned to a table, which Sakura also faced. The flowers and plants were beautiful and varied in countless bright colors. These plants are poisonous, Rin stated. Sakura turned to the medic with shock, then back at the beautiful plants. If you're not sure a plant is poisonous or not, there's one surefire way to tell. Rin and Sakura leaned forward. The brunette poked the stem of the plant then turned to Sakura. The stem of a plant is never poisonous, only the leaves or even the vines, but never the stem. If you get a kunai or shuriken and stab the stem a liquid that's clear, but flows slowly, it's poisonous. Clear and flows slowly, Sakura told herself with a quiet tone. That's right, not only that but you can tell from the taste as well. Sakura shook her head then did a double take on Rin. Wouldn't that defeat the purpose of avoiding the plant? Rin giggled a bit then straightened up. Only if you ingest it. If you stab it and you're not sure, take just a little lick of if. If it tastes bitter and makes your tongue tingle then spit it out immediately. Don't leave it in there for more than 10 seconds, otherwise there's a high chance it could harm you. Now, if you can't tell immediately and you're nearing the 10-second mark, spit it out, wait 5 minutes. If you're dying to try it again, then it's most likely poisonous. How did you all develop these techniques? Sakura asked. Watching animals, Rin replied simply. Animals will taste, but not ingest many poisons, which we adopted. However, some plants give off a certain venom that animals will spit out, but then still try because it tastes good. Those plants are very rare, and there are less than a dozen of them in the forest of death. We check the forest monthly to make sure that that specific type of plant doesn't grow out of control, otherwise we'll lose more animals that we'd have to replace, and during the time of the exams countless genin would die. It's just easier to kill the plant than replace animals and deal with angry countries. So what does this plant look like? Well, it has a few different forms, and we don't keep it on storage since it would most likely kill the rest of the plants. But there's one defining characteristic that the plant has. It has leaves that looks like two shurikens stacked on top of each other. Sakura quickly pictured the image then nodded once to Rin. Is there any treatment in case if someone ingests them? Rin cocked an eyebrow up. My teammates are idiots. I need to make sure in case they eat it. Well, there aren't many treatments, but we do have a vaccine that helps neutralize the poison. I could get you some if you need it, but your teammates surely can't be. Sakura gave Rin an expectant look. The brunette smiled then turned her body this way. Sakura looked around at the other medics who paid no attention to her while Rin fished through countless antidotes in a refrigerator-looking storage device. Sakura took a quick glance, seeing what must have been 100 vials of various types of liquid. Rin examined each one closely, wanting to make sure she acquired the right one before grabbing a vial with a blue liquid inside of it. Here we go, Rin exclaimed, turning around and holding the vial in front of Sakura before shutting the door. This is a vaccine for the double shuriken leaf. What's cool about it is that it's actually a poison that counteracts the effects of the double shuriken. Sakura hummed curiously as she took the vial to get a closer look. So you could use it on your kunai or shuriken against opponents to poison them. But if your friends are as dumb as you think, I'd save as much of that stuff as possible. Right. Sakura chuckled with a nervous smile. Do you have something else to put this in so I don't spill it or something? Rin turned, grabbed something off of the desk to her right then held out a simple cork for Sakura. The pink-haired kunoichi took the wooden cork then pushed it down firmly to make sure nothing could leak out. Now, is there anything else we could go over while we're here? Your uncle only asked me to go over poisons with you, but I think I could teach you a few basic medical techniques. Sakura's face lit up with excitement and a huge grin crossed her face. A medical ninja? Me, really? Rin giggled then escorted Sakura out of the floral room and back into the hallway. You don't have to do this if you have other duties, Miss Rin, really. No, I want to make sure the next generation of shinobi are well prepared for the future. Sakura gave a curious look to Rin, who simply kept her eyes forward. It's something not many of our people believe in anymore. What do you mean? A look of shock crossed Rin's face as she quickly shook her head. It's nothing, forget I said anything. Rin turned into a room and Sakura followed accordingly. Alright, this room has many different concoctions that serve various purposes. The thing is, most of our medical equipment is activated by a precise amount of chakra flow. Too much will cause an overdose affect and kill the person, and not enough chakra won't make the medicine work. This, for example. Rin turned around and lifted a pill in capsule form. What does this look like? A clotting pill? Sakura asked. Yes, but not entirely true. Certain poisons, both used by shinobi, and the types found in plants all have one thing in common: they're carried through the bloodstream. They mostly attach themselves to red blood cells and get carried through the body. This pill can act as a clotting pill, but with the right chakra flow, it only clots specific blood. The blood that has the poison attached, Sakura stated. Very good. And that's where chakra flow comes in. Rin lifted up her hand. Sakura looked up with a puzzled look on her face when Rin's hand started to glow green with chakra. What you have to do is send your chakra through a person's bloodstream. The real trick is that your chakra has to flow as effortlessly as the person's blood, otherwise you may end up harming the patient. There wouldn't be any permanent damage, but it would still be very uncomfortable for the individual. The pill does the clotting for you, so you have to sense the clots with your chakra, and then push them all into a single area. Sometimes though I could understand being in a time crunch, so try to leave the areas you send the clots no more than 4. Once all the clots are in one area, get a blade and slowly make tiny cuts on the person's skin, enough to draw blood, but not enough to leave a scar. After that, use your chakra again to push the clots out. This sounds a lot more serious than just the basics, if you ask me. Rin laughed a bit. Don't worry. I hear you have excellent chakra control. It'll take a few practice runs, but you should be fine. You don't happen to have a person who was poisoned to practice on, do you? Sakura asked jokingly. No, but what we're going to work on is you flowing your chakra through a person's bloodstream. You're going to practice on me. Sakura's eyes widened a bit with worry. Don't worry, I've been through this exercise plenty of times through the medical initiation. They do it to demonstrate the pain you'd put another person through if you failed the exercise. Now, then, let's start with something small. Rin rolled up her sleeve, exposing her arm to Sakura. Go ahead and place your hand on my arm gently. Sakura nodded, then did so. You know how to funnel your chakra into someone else, right? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now just concentrate and ease your chakra into my arm. Don't force it. Sakura's eyes were closed as she focused on letting her chakra flow out. It felt as though something was blocking her chakra flow. The kunoichi scowled a bit and focused harder. Don't push your chakra. You're trying too hard, Sakura. Just relax. Your chakra isn't used to this. Sakura had no idea if it was her words, or Rin's soothing tone, but she felt more calm and relaxed. Sure enough, Sakura could feel her chakra push through whatever barrier was holding her back and flowing naturally with Rin's blood. Good job. I'm impressed with how well you're doing. I can hardly sense your chakra. So this is all I have to do? Sakura asked, opening one eye to look at Rin. Don't get too excited now. What aren't you noticing? Sakura opened both eyes to fully give Rin a confused look. How far is your chakra going? Sakura closed her eyes to concentrate. It's only going to your elbows. Sakura's eyes both opened with a sudden realization. And my chakra can't go into your hands. But I'm right on your wrists. This is what I mean by basics, Rin stated. Your chakra is flowing in a straight line. The joints are a bit trickier to deal with. Your chakra has to be able to flow freely. Right now it's flowing where you want it to flow. How do I change that? You have to let your chakra go, without letting it go. Sakura tilted her head and blinked repeatedly with confusion. That's the best way I can describe it. As a metaphor, I would say that it's like letting your child wander around in a park, but not letting them out of your sight. Does that make sense? So, I'm keeping control of my chakra, but letting it go at the same time. Right, Rin replied with a nervous smile. She hoped she didn't confuse the poor girl too badly. Your uncle probably has a better way of teaching it to you. This medical stuff has become like second nature to me. Well, the Chunin exams aren't for a while now. I could work on it and come around when you're not busy. That works, Rin replied. You can come around my lunch break at 1 o'clock. Are you sure? Sakura asked, feeling guilty over taking the woman's only break during the day. Yeah, it's fine. I usually get a break until 3 anyway. Sakura's eyes widened a bit. Rin, noticing the younger girl's shock, simply shrugged. I'm a valued member of the medical corps. I can basically ask for almost anything I want around here, no arguments and no questions asked. That's handy to have. Rin nodded with a sly smile on her face. So I'll take this. Sakura put the vial of poison in a safe compartment in her back pouch. And I'll see you tomorrow. Sure thing, Rin replied with her usual warm smile. Sakura smiled back then held out her hand awkwardly. Rin giggled at the gesture then shook Sakura's hand. Thank you again, Miss Rin. Anytime, sweetie. I'll escort you to the door. Sakura nodded then walked with Rin back towards the front door. Once Sakura exited the hospital, she turned around and waved to Rin once again before continuing down the road. Rin watched until the girl was out of sight, then went back inside the hospital. Sakura walked through the busy streets of Konoha, wondering what she was going to do with the rest of her day. It had just turned noon, and she still had a meeting, she corrected, with Ryu at 3. Sakura looked up and thought for a moment. Did she even set up a place to meet him at? The pink-haired Kunoichi groaned and lowered her head. How was she supposed to go on a meeting with Ryu if she didn't know where to meet him at? Sakura looked forward, seeing a familiar orange-haired man browsing a merchant's fruit selection. Wait, isn't that Ryu-sensei? Should I ask him? No, you haven't even said 2 words to him, plus how creepy would it be if you just asked out of the blue where he and his students were staying at? Yeah, that doesn't sound desperate at all, Sakura. Just do it, girl. Sakura groaned, knowing she'd never hear the end of it from her crazy personality. The girl thought herself crazy as she walked towards the orange-haired man. Mostly because of inner Sakura. Excuse me, Sakura said. The man snapped his head towards Sakura, causing the latter to flinch a bit with uneasiness. Hi, I'm Sakura Haruno. I met you and your students yesterday. Oh yes, I remember. The man seemed to ease his body a bit. Can I help you? Well, Sakura shifted her feet with nervousness and fiddled with her hands. I was wondering, I was supposed to meet Ryu later this afternoon and I was wondering if you could tell me where you all are staying at. The man blinked with confusion, making Sakura even more nervous. Damn it, I'm such an idiot. I could just tell Ryu to meet you somewhere if that would be easier, the man finally said. Yes. Sakura mentally cursed herself for her nervous outburst then shook her head. I mean, yes, that would work just fine. Very well. Where should he meet you at? How about, here. Here. Sakura once again mentally cursed herself in her complete nervous demeanor. I guess it couldn't do any harm. Yahiko pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. Sakura looked with confusion as he wrote something down and handed it to her. This is the hotel we're staying at. Just wait for him and he'll be out. Does he know what time you're coming? Around 3 o'clock. I'll remind him just to be sure. Sakura gave a respectful bow then lifted her head up. Thank you very much, sir. Yahiko nodded, and then Sakura was off. God, that was the most awkward thing ever. Yahiko thought to himself. After a while, Sakura got her jitters worked out right as she got home. She reached for the doorknob, but heard someone talking inside. She slowly turned the knob, and peeked in. To her shock, Zaku and Dosu waited inside, sitting on the couch and talking to one another. Sakura poked her entire head inside of the house, seeing her uncle sitting on the chair across from them. All eyes turned to Sakura as she opened the door and walked inside. Ah, there she is, Higure exclaimed loudly. Sakura, we were just talking about you. Man, these teammates of yours, they're a riot. Higure put his arm around Sakura, then pulled her closely and whispered, "Get them out of my house." Sakura rolled her eyes, then looked at her teammates. She didn't need an explanation on why they were here, or why Higure wanted them out. Just the fact it was Zaku and Dosu was enough. "Come on guys," Sakura called out. The boys hopped off the couch, then headed for the door. "Can you pick up groceries on your way home?" Higure asked. Sakura sighed, then nodded. "Right. 1 second." Higure ran off upstairs while Zaku and Dosu waited in the doorway. "My time with Rin went well, by the way, thanks for asking." Sakura crossed her arms, then huffed. Was it too much to ask, for crying out loud? Zaku and Dosu turned to one another, then shrugged. Higure came back downstairs and handed her a list. "Money?" Sakura asked, holding out her hand. "Right," Higure replied before running back up the stairs. "Is he getting senile?" Zaku asked. "I heard that," Higure's voice called out from upstairs. "Age certainly hasn't affected his hearing," Dosu whispered to Zaku. "I heard that too." Higure came back downstairs, then handed Sakura some money. She put both the list and money in her back pouch. "Alright, try not to get yourself killed with these two." "I'll try," Sakura replied with an overplayed tone. Higure waved as Sakura and her teammates walked outside, then closed the door behind them. The trio walked through the streets mostly in silence. Sakura knew that they came to her house to try and patch things up from yesterday. She also knew that the silent treatment would milk the situation a bit more. Zaku and Dosu looked to one another before glancing back at their kunoichi teammate. "So, how's it going?" Zaku asked. "Not bad," Sakura replied quietly. "Cool. What have you been up to today?" Dosu asked next. "I went to visit my parents, then trained with Uncle Higure, and then visited with a medical ninja he's friends with at the hospital." "Learn anything cool?" Zaku inquired. "Lots of cool stuff," Sakura replied with a smile on her face. "Stuff I could use to save your life, so remember that next time you want to taunt me." Zaku and Dosu gave relieved looks to one another. "So what did you idiots have in mind to do today?" "Well, we could train, or just run around town, or go eat somewhere," Zaku suggested. "I doubt she wants to train, idiot. She's been practicing with her uncle and learning medical crap all day. That's why I gave the other two suggestions, idiot." Zaku and Dosu gave each other the stink eye, only to be broke up by Sakura. "Whoa, idiots, calm down, alright. Let's just go eat somewhere since we didn't do that yesterday." "Sounds good to me," Zaku replied. Dosu nodded in agreement and the trio was off. The teammates were walking and talking as they headed to their favorite restaurant. Sakura always found it amazing that they could hang out nearly every day, and still have something to talk about for hours. Well, looks like we have the orphan trio," a voice called out. Sakura, Zaku, and Dosu turned around, seeing Hinata with Sasuke, Shino, and Choji standing behind them. "Oh great," Zaku murmured. "Anyone else lose their appetite?" "Oh, very funny orphan trash," Hinata snapped. "I wouldn't want to ruin your daily diet of garbage and stolen food." Zaku's eyes hardened on the young Hyuga heiress. "I'm sorry, but isn't your outfit a bit too slutty for a pampered little princess like you?" Dosu asked. Hinata looked at her very risque attire. She wore a black tube top that exposed her flat stomach, and tight pants that were very similar to Sakura's. "Well, unlike you, I'm not afraid to show myself to anyone." "Come on, mummy man, can't show us your face. Maybe you're so ugly your parents just left you lying in a dumpster." Sakura quickly grabbed Dosu's arm, holding the hunched-over boy back from attacking. Hinata laughed a bit before glaring at the only one she hadn't insulted yet. "That's right, listen to the resident team slut. You know, there's a rumor going around that she gives you both head. Is that true?" Now the situation was reversed as Dosu was now the one who had to hold Sakura back by her arm. It was a losing battle as Dosu was being pulled forward. Zaku took Sakura's other arm and the two together successfully managed to pull her away. Ah, did I upset the poor baby? You're hardly one to be calling people babies, you spoiled little brat, Sakura seethed. The little Hyuga princess has everything handed to her. Oh, are you going to preach how I haven't endured the hardships of being an orphan? Hinata asked. Whether or not if I was an orphan, I'm from a superior clan, so I could still best you in battle. You wanna put that to the test? Sakura questioned. Hinata threw her head back and laughed mockingly before focusing her white eyes on Sakura. Even if you weren't outnumbered, you're still outclassed. Besides, what would your dear old uncle say if I were to harm his only living relative? Sakura screamed with rage, nearly breaking free of Zaku and Dosu's grip. Whoa Nelly! Zaku shouted, pulling back with all his might. Whoops! Touched a nerve did I? Hinata questioned. Sakura growled in anger as she fought to break free of her teammate's grip. That's no way for a lady to act. Hinata turned her head, isn't that right Sasuke-kun? This seemed to keep Sakura from thrashing around like an animal. A small blush formed across her cheeks as she glanced up at the always brooding Uchiha. Hey, I found out how to keep the noisy girl to shut her trap. Well, aside from blowing her teammates. Sakura scowled angrily as Hinata simply laughed then walked away. The others followed after her. I really hate her, Sakura fumed. Don't we all? Zaku murmured. The trio was silent, both boys finally releasing Sakura once they knew she had control of herself. Alright, if any of us face her during the Chunin exams, we have to punch her in the face. Or even better, we could pants her, Dosu suggested. Sakura cracked a smile at the idea. Think of how embarrassed the little princess would be then. I'd much rather poke out those all-seeing eyes of hers, Sakura muttered. Then she won't be acting so high and mighty. I know this is weird, but why was Choji with them? Zaku asked. Probably because we always call him fat, Dosu replied. Oh, right, well, who wants to go eat? The team made it to the restaurant and ordered their food. After a few moments of awkward silence the Hyuga princess caused, they started talking again, cracking jokes and having a good time. So Dosu and I are hiding behind Aruka's desk, and when he comes in he dodges the signature bucket of water on the door, but what he didn't see was the mouse trap we set up that snapped right over his foot. Dosu's shoulders bounced as he laughed at the memory of when they were at the academy. Man, that was so long ago. Yeah, Dosu agreed. Didn't you used to hate us back then? The boy asked, pointing a finger at Sakura. I couldn't help me, Sakura snapped. Everyone hated you back then, and I blamed you guys for being the reason I couldn't be on a team with Sasuke-kun. Just be glad you weren't on a team with Hinata, Zaku replied before taking a sip of his drink. You had a crush on her for a while, didn't you? Dosu asked accusingly. What? The black-haired boy asked, slamming his cup on the table. I had no such thing. Yeah, you did, for a while right before and after we graduated. You liked her because she dressed like a slut. That and she was curvy, Zaku muttered. Besides, I didn't know she was a major bitch. I mean, if she didn't act so bitchy I'd do her, but Ew, Sakura shouted, throwing her fork down. I'm still trying to eat. Really? Dosu asked. We've been here for a while now. Yeah, what time is it? Zaku asked. Sakura looked up at the clock hanging on the wall in the restaurant. Her eyes widened with shock before she let out a quick, fearful scream. I'm late. Please take care of this, guys. Sakura quickly slid out of the table then rushed out the door. Dosu and Zaku looked at the door then to each other and shrugged. Oh god, it's 3:30. I'm so late. Sakura ran through the streets, sliding around corners and even did a perfect flip over a merchant's cart. She ran halfway across the village before she turned the corner on the street the hotel was at. As she turned the corner, the kunoichi collided with someone. Sakura stumbled back, groaning and holding the side of her head. Hey, watch it, you. Oh, Ryu. The familiar blonde was rubbing the front of his face with pain, and quickly gave a huge smile once he saw the pink-haired Kunoichi before him. Hey Sakura-chan. Sorry about running into you, ow. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry Ryu, are you okay? Sakura walked forward and moved the boy's hand away. Surprisingly, aside from a slightly reddened face, nothing seemed wrong with him. I'm so sorry I'm late. I had lunch with my friends and time slipped away and, I'm so sorry Ryu, really I am. It's okay Sakura-chan, Ryu replied, now rubbing the back of his head embarrassingly. I didn't have anything better to do so I just waited. Oh, that's so sweet. Why'd I have to make him wait damn it? My sensei told me you met him in the market right? Yeah, he seemed nice. Weird, but nice. Ryu nodded in agreement. So, I'll start showing you around. Sakura walked forward with the blonde walking by her side. Sakura showed Ryu around the marketplace, and the shopping center of Konoha. She showed him the weapons store where they had everything ranging from shuriken, tantos, shields, even staffs. Next door was a store where they had a few scrolls of low-ranking ninjutsu, but they were still expensive nonetheless and all dealings were monitored by the village and Danzo himself. During the entire tour, Sakura talked about herself and her family, and Ryu told her about his friends and sensei. She showed Ryu as much of the village as she could. The last place they went to was the top of the Hokage monument. Ryu gazed with wonder as the sun set in the distance, finding the whole sight to be breathtaking. Sakura walked up and sat down on the ledge of the monument, pulling her knees towards her chest, resting her arms over her knees and a smile on her face as she watched the sun. Ryu took a deep breath then walked forward and sat next to Sakura. The view sure is pretty, the blonde said awkwardly. Yeah, Sakura agreed. My uncle once brought me up here one day when I was really sad. He told me this is the spot where my parents first kissed. Ryu smiled then looked at Sakura. They chose a pretty romantic spot. Sakura nodded with agreement. So, your uncle takes care of you? Yep. He's great though. I couldn't ask for anyone better to raise me. Was he a shinobi too? Like your mom and dad? Sakura rolled her eyes then sat her chin on her arms. Is that a no? You couldn't tell from the way he acts. Most veteran shinobi I know are harsh, serious, and jerks. My uncle is just, always light-hearted. It's weird. So he's retired? Ryu asked. Yep. He retired after I was born apparently. He told me after my mom passed away that he had to take care of me, despite Danzo and the village elders' protests. Protests? Ryu repeated. He was a very skilled shinobi. His generation apparently was full of prodigies. One in particular was an old friend of his, Minato Namikaze. Ryu's eyes flickered at the name. He was a ninja famous for his speed and abilities. He had this one technique called the Flying Thunder God. He had the nickname of Konoha's Yellow Flash. I've heard of him, Ryu said. Sakura turned her head, hearing the sorrow-filled tone in the boy's voice. He was a great ninja, trained by the traitor Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin. He was loyal to the village and brought great honor to the land of fire and Konoha. Sakura tilted her head a bit, showing worry on her face. Ryu looked over, then quickly smiled. I know a lot of history is all. You sure? If I didn't know any better I'd say you had a personal history with him. No way. How could I have a history with a dead hero? Ryu chuckled nervously, hoping Sakura would turn away. Luckily for him, she did. So how does your uncle know Minato? They used to be best friends, going all the way back to the academy. The way Uncle Higure talks about Minato's abilities is weird. He doesn't say it, but I can hear it when he tells me of his adventures. He had the utmost respect for him. Uncle even told me that he believed Minato could have become Hokage if Lord Danzo wasn't. Well, I shouldn't say it out loud. Really? Ryu asked, a smile growing across his face. Minato Namikaze couldn't become Hokage. That's what Uncle Higure tells me. Ryu grinned then looked up at the sky, a great sense of pride coming over him. Oh gosh, it's getting late. I have to be home otherwise my uncle will kill me. I'll walk you home, Ryu said. Sakura turned and smiled at the offer. Come on, it's the least I can do after you showed me around your village. Alright, but I have to stop and get groceries first. At this time of night, Sakura's shoulders slumped a bit. There really wasn't any point in getting groceries now. Higure was going to kill her. Come on, let's head back before it gets too dark, otherwise my sensei'll kill me too. Sakura nodded as Ryu stood up. The blonde extended his hand out to Sakura. The kunoichi grinned, then took his hand and was pulled to her feet. The couple was soon walking through the streets, heading towards Sakura's house. Hey, what's your favorite type of food? Sakura asked. Ramen. Why? Just wondering, what are you doing for lunch tomorrow? Ryu turned his head with a puzzled look on his face. There's still some parts of the village I haven't shown you. Maybe we could meet up tomorrow morning and I could show you around the rest of the village, and then go for lunch. That'd be nice, Ryu replied with a smile. Sakura smiled back then stopped. Ryu stopped too and looked around curiously. We're at my house now. Ryu looked up, seeing the young kunoichi's house. It wasn't a bad place in the blonde's opinion. Well, I would invite you in, but I think that my uncle would be asleep by now. Sakura leaned forward and whispered, he's kind of old. I understand, Ryu replied laughing. So what time tomorrow? 9 or 10 maybe. Depends on what time you wake up. Let's go for 10, Ryu suggested. Alright then, see you tomorrow at 10. Sakura walked up to her door and opened it before turning the blonde one last time with a smile on her face. Good night, Ryu. Good night, Sakura-chan, Ryu replied. Thanks again. Sakura nodded, then entered her home and closed the door. Yeah, a voice exclaimed. Sakura jumped with fright, turning around to see her uncle lying down on the couch reading a book. You totally don't have a thing for Mr. Young Mercenary. What are you doing awake? Sakura questioned with a furious blush on her face. Waiting on my niece to get home with groceries. Higure closed his book then sat up. Why didn't you invite the young man in? I thought you'd be sleeping. Higure smirked then looked out the window. His eyes widened with shock as he saw said mercenary walking by. Sakura noticed the look of awe in her uncle's eyes then immediately grew concerned. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Higure quickly shook his head and blinked repeatedly. Nothing. It's nothing. I guess I'm just a bit tired after all. Higure stood up, still having a puzzled look on his face. What did you say the boy looked like? Sakura was taken back by the question. Well, he has spiky blonde hair and big round blue eyes. Sakura blushed then glared at her uncle. And I only noticed his eyes because they were big and round. Higure murmured. Sakura once again looked on in confusion. Usually her uncle would be all over a chance to tease her. Again, the older man shook his head then ran his hand through his hair. Wow, I must be tired. I'm heading to bed. There are leftovers in the refrigerator. Don't ask me about my day or anything, Sakura muttered as her uncle walked up the stairs. The young girl went into the kitchen then got out some vegetables from yesterday, heated them up then sat down and ate them slowly. Sakura chewed slowly as she thought about her uncle's expression when she told him what Ryu looked like. Why would spiky blonde hair and blue eyes freak him out? For God's sake, she had pink hair and that doesn't freak him out. As soon as she finished her dinner, she cleaned her plate then sat it on the drying rack. Sakura walked upstairs, went into her room and dressed into her nighttime clothes, a baggy red shirt with a white circle across the chest, and sweatpants. She made sure that the money her uncle gave her, the list, the poison Rin gave her, and the address Yahiko gave her, were safely put in the drawer of her desk. She walked out of her room and headed for her uncle's bedroom. She opened the door, seeing the older man soundly asleep. As soon as she flicked on the lights, Higure groaned and pulled a pillow over his head. I was sleeping, his muffled voice shouted in protest. I don't care, I'm going to tell you about my day. Higure groaned again then sat up, rubbing the sleep out of his eye. Sakura smiled as sweetly as she could before jumping on her uncle's bed. Hey, you're always asking me about my day anyway. Not while it's bedtime. Besides, Rin came by to tell you her lunch hour has been moved to 2 o'clock and she told me that she went over how to identify poisons, and she's teaching you some medical ninjutsu. That was the first half of my day, Sakura stated. Now for the second half. Higure rolled his head then stared at his niece. Well, on my way back from the hospital, I ran into Ryu's sensei, a guy named Yahiko. He was nice enough to tell me where they were staying so I could meet Ryu later. Then I came home. And you found Zaku and Dosu here, took them away, made up, went to eat, showed this Ryu kid around town then came home and woke me up. Good night. Sakura jerked forward and grabbed a handful of her uncle's light brown hair. Ow, 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 okay I'm up. Sakura released her uncle who winced as he threw his hair back. You're so mean. Well if you must know, after Zaku and Dosu and I made up we ran into that bitch Hinata who for no reason decides to insult us and call us orphans and trash and whatnot. Sakura, you know you can't get into fights with her unless you want to start a huge issue with Danzo and Hiyashi. I know, but she doesn't always have to be a bitch does she? Higure shrugged. There's nothing you can do about it. Since Danzo's in charge, the princess gets whatever she wants and if someone like you harms a hair on her head then we're both in trouble. Sakura crossed her arms then huffed. Higure smirked then placed his hand on Sakura's head. Don't worry, you're still a better woman than she is, and I'll be damned if you won't be a better shinobi than her. Sakura smirked then looked to her uncle. Thank you Uncle Higure. The older man smiled back then started ruffling Sakura's hair and laughed about it. Sakura cried out then forced away Higure's hand. You little. The young girl dove forward, only for Higure to dodge then tickle her sides. Sakura once again cried out then started laughing uncontrollably. Higure chuckled as his niece squirmed and thrashed around while laughing. I give up. Uncle. Uncle. Higure snickered then removed his hands from Sakura's sides. The kunoichi took a deep breath then sat up. You're a jerk. You brought this upon yourself, Higure replied. Sakura stuck her tongue out then jumped off of the bed. Does this mean I can go to sleep now? Yes, you can go to sleep now, Sakura replied. Thank you, Higure mockingly said. Sakura turned off the lights then closed the door and headed to her room. Once inside, Sakura simply walked up then flopped down on her bed. What a busy day, she told herself before closing her eyes and drifting off to sleep. Jiraiya walked around the hideout with Rinmara on his back, looking around and smiling as people went by. The tall Sannin had finally got Rinmara out of his shell, and now the boy acted friendly with everyone, with the exception of the one who killed Raiga, Hana. The boy wasn't too talkative around Konan either, due to the fact she played a huge role in taking out the swordsman. Still, Jiraiya had shown nothing but kindness towards the boy. Jiraiya was the only one Rinmara really felt comfortable talking with, and as such was usually carried on the man's back all day around the hideout. Jiraiya-sama, Rinmara spoke. The white-haired man turned his head with a curious look on his face. I'm hungry. Alright, let's stop and get something to eat kiddo. Rinmara smiled then nodded as the tall Sannin walked towards the place's makeshift cafe. Jiraiya's eyes softened a bit as he looked up. I wonder how Naruto is doing. I'm going to kill you. Neji and Kiba were groaning as they tried to pry Yahiko's hands away from Naruto's throat. You idiot. You were out late with a girl from Konoha. What's the matter with you? Answer. Maybe if he could breath he'd answer, Neji shouted. Yahiko growled then removed his hands then huffed. Neji and Kiba both sighed with relief while Naruto was panting quickly to catch his breath. Why am I always the voice of reason around here? Sheesh. Why the hell did you freak out that badly sensei? Kiba asked. Because we're supposed to be undercover, not getting dates with enemy shinobi. Come on, Naruto coughed, rubbing his now red throat. Sakura isn't like that, She's nice and she showed me around the village a bit, except those restricted areas. Then what's the point of hanging around her? Naruto rubbed the back of his head then chuckled. Yahiko rolled his eyes. Naruto, what do you think is going to happen when she finds out you're a rogue? Or after we leave and you never talk to her again? I dunno, Naruto muttered. I like her though, and she's fun. Plus her uncle knows about my father, so maybe I can get some information out of. Yahiko shot forward, staring directly into Naruto's eyes, a finger poking the boy in the chest. He knows WHO. My dad? Naruto asked. Minato Namikaze, that famous yellow flash guy. Naruto, you look exactly like your dad. What do you think will happen if her uncle sees you? The blonde's brow furrowed a bit, then a look of realization came across his face. Oh, yeah, so that's bad for us. No more seeing this girl. That's not fair, Naruto snapped. Thanks to her I can show you where there are restricted areas you can sneak into so you can get info. Yahiko opened his mouth, and left it open, unable to think of a reply. Yeah, take that. Besides, what else am I supposed to do during the next few weeks until the exams start? I hate you, Yahiko seethed. Under no circumstances are you to meet her uncle or anyone else who might have known your father. Who's her sensei? I didn't ask, Naruto admitted. Avoid her sensei too, or any other adults she knows. Yeah, that won't seem suspicious, Kiba muttered. Why don't we just go with him next time? We can make sure that Naruto doesn't do anything stupid and make sure that in 9 months there won't be any new babies with a 13-year-old father. Naruto growled at Kiba, who simply laughed at his friend. That sounds like a fair idea, Neji said. You know Naruto will just go on this date anyway, even if he has to sneak out. If Kiba and I go, at least someone is keeping an eye on him. That's why I don't want you two to come, Naruto replied. They're going, Yahiko stated. Because Neji has a point and because I want to see you suffer. The orange-haired shinobi got up then walked to his room, slamming the door behind him. Sorry boss, we gotta ruin your quality time, Kiba teased. Naruto rolled his eyes at Kiba's attempt at a joke then walked into his room. The day came to an end. Nighttime fell upon the village. The Hokage, Danzo, walked in the tunnels of his underground chambers with 3 of his most loyal ninjas following behind him. Have the troops made it to the land of waves yet? Danzo asked. They should have, Orochimaru replied with a sneer on his face. It took my team and I less than 2 days to get there. Ha! Guy exclaimed. Lee and I could get there in less than 1 day. But not with Lazy Boy and Chubby with you, Orochimaru shot back with a small chuckle. Enough. Danzo stopped and slammed the tip of his cane into the floor. The other 3 froze and looked at Danzo. I want confirmation. You told the troops to send a message back once they arrived, correct? Yes, Lord Danzo. The Hokage and his officers continued forward. And how are the Chunin exams coming along? Danzo asked, turning to Kakashi. I assure you that Sasuke Uchiha will be ready for the exams, and he will pass with flying colors. You know, if Sasuke fails I could always give him a curse mark, Orochimaru stated. Danzo's eye moved over to the Sannin, sensing the sinister edge in his tone. Your curse marks aren't safe for every single person, Danzo bluntly stated. That damned mark has killed a few good shinobi, and fine academy students. Orochimaru crossed his arms and shrugged with a cocky grin on his face. I have 5 young students who survived the curse marks. Not only that, but when they each took the Chunin exams, they were the only ones who passed, and survived. Orochimaru chuckled quietly, getting hardened glares from Guy and Kakashi. Plus Anko has the curse mark as well. 6 individuals out of nearly 50 others you brought in and killed, Danzo stated. If you could find a way to give the curse mark to shinobi with a higher success rate, I'll risk Sasuke for such a procedure. I could do some testing, but I need more funding, and more test subjects. Perhaps you have some prisoners of war that I might run some tests on. Lord Hokage, Guy spoke, I do not think it's wise to let this maniac run these tests. Remember when he abducted 100 of Konoha's own babies, and ran unauthorized tests with the first Hokage's cells? I delivered results, Orochimaru seethed, glaring angrily at Guy. Orochimaru is right, Danzo stated. Do not worry, Guy. After that, Orochimaru fully knows the punishment for running tests without first running them by me first. Besides, Kakashi can attest to Yamato's strength. Kakashi nodded his head. Then why have we not used him in battle? Guy asked. These rogues that attacked our outposts these past few months, even the Land of Lightning would run with fear if they knew we still had the power of the first Hokage under our belt. Yamato's abilities are nothing compared to the first's, Orochimaru casually stated. They are unique and formidable, but I'll still need to run more experiments before he can be comparable to the first. I know I'd get results faster if I could just give him a curse mark. Find a way to increase success results, Danzo swiftly replied. Have we gotten word from any of our allies and contestants for the Chunin exams? Sasori is sending over his Jinchuriki and the boys' team, Orochimaru answered. Their sensei is a man named Baki. Hanzo is sending a few teams, but he's not sure if they'll be of any worth. Onoki hasn't decided if his village will participate or not. Some of the other villages are entering their teams as well, and a few mercenary teams too. Kumogakure? Danzo questioned. Same as every year when we host. No. But, an interesting note is that the Mizukage is thinking of sending a few of his genin over to participate. Curious. Either they wish to discuss the Land of Waves takeover, or Yagura finally wishes to discuss an alliance. Should we plan for the worse? Kakashi asked. Danzo nodded once, then stopped in front of a pair of metal doors, then turned around. Kakashi, Guy, you two may leave. The two Jonin bowed their heads, then turned and walked away. Danzo looked at Orochimaru, then turned and opened the metal doors. The two walked into a room that looked like an operating room. Danzo pulled down his shirt, showing his right arm that looked like wood and was covered with Sharingan eyes. Any complications? Orochimaru asked, walking over to a counter. None yet, Danzo replied, lying down on the operating table. Orochimaru turned around, wearing a pair of rubber gloves, an operating gown, and having a mask covering his mouth. What have you been experimenting with lately? I haven't gotten any new reports from you. I'm working mainly on the curse marks, Orochimaru replied, lifting up Danzo's arm. I've been checking in with Yamato irregularly. He's making little progress on his own, unfortunately. How is your other eye? It still works, Danzo replied. Are there any new developments with Yamato that could be applied to me? None that would be of any worth, Orochimaru replied, setting Danzo's arm back down. I'm going to need a small sample. Danzo nodded as Orochimaru grabbed a scalpel. The Hokage's lip twitched a bit as Orochimaru sliced off a tiny piece of skin. I never got an answer to my request for more test subjects. I don't have many prisoners to spare. As you know, we've found a way to turn enemies into allies, which is more beneficial to the village than your failed science projects. Orochimaru huffed as he observed the skin sample under a stethoscope. I can give you a list tomorrow of prisoners you may take. It won't be that many, however. Orochimaru pulled his head back, then removed the sample tray and placed it to the side. Perhaps, there's another system we could work out. Danzo turned his head, staring at the snake curiously. The Chunin exams, many genin from various villages die. If I were to find a few of these dying genin before they actually bit the dust and saved them. Just be sure to keep it under wraps, Danzo stated. The last thing I need is some child seeing your abilities and surviving. If word got out that I allowed one of the legendary Sannin to enter the Forest of Death during the Chunin exams. I'm well aware of the risks, Orochimaru replied quietly. The treatment seems to be working well. Your cells are mixing quite splendidly with the first Hokage's cells, and all the Sharingan seem to be working just fine as well. Good, Danzo murmured, sitting up on the table. When the day comes to invade the land of lightning, I will be able to lead my forces on the front lines. When is that day to come exactly? Orochimaru questioned. If we can't convince Yagura to join us, then he'll undoubtedly join the Raikage. Both Kumogakure and Kurigakure are both very formidable military powers respectively. Even with our alliances, it will be quite a fight. And that's assuming they don't get the surrounding, smaller nations on their side as well. You forget Shisui's ability, Orochimaru, Danzo stated. Once Yagura is within my grasp, I'll make him join us. Do not forget that the Mizukage is a Jinchuriki who has control of his tailed beast. I'm not sure if a simple genjutsu, or mind-manipulating jutsu will work on him. It hardly works on me. Have faith, Orochimaru, Danzo whispered. Before you know it, the world will be engulfed by the wrath of fire, and I shall rule over it all. Orochimaru glanced back at the Hokage, then dropped his gloves and mask in a trash bin. Not as long as you may believe, old man. Rinmara was restless. For some reason he couldn't sleep. The boy tossed and turned, placing his pillow over his face to try and fall asleep. He groaned and stared at the darkness surrounding the room. Rinmara sat up, then looked to the door. Master Jiraiya, are you there? The boy waited, then sighed to himself. What were the chances he'd be waiting anyway? The door creaked a bit, causing Rinmara's head to snap up. A young lady with long black hair poked her head in. Excuse me, she said, but were you calling for someone? Rinmara blushed, then looked down. I'm sorry, I was calling for Master Jiraiya. The young woman entered the room, then lit a lantern to provide light. You're that Rinmara boy, right? The cripple nodded. I've heard of you. You got here just a day or two before Zabuza-sama and I. Rinmara looked up with a confused look. He had heard of Zabuza, even before joining these rebels. He had heard it from Raiga. Zabuza was another member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, a group which Raiga hated. The young woman sat down on the side of the bed and smiled. I'm Haku. It's nice to finally meet you. It's nice to meet you too, Rinmara muttered. Why were you calling for Master Jiraiya? I couldn't sleep. I was hoping he could walk me around the place and talk. His stories sometimes put me to sleep. Haku hummed. I could walk you around. If you're okay with it, that is. I wasn't doing anything besides walking around anyway. Oh okay, if you're sure, Haku-chan. The black-haired woman laughed, then put Rinmara's pouch on her back. I'm a boy. Rinmara's eyes popped open and his jaw dropped with disbelief. Rinmara was staring at empty space as Haku walked aimlessly through the halls of the underground hideout. Rinmara glanced at the boy, then turned his gaze back forward. So, you're an ally of the Demon of the Mist. Haku gave a surprised look back at the boy, but only smiled and looked back forward. Yes, I am. I'm surprised you knew who he was. I used to be Raiga Kurosuke's partner, Rinmara replied quietly. He was one of the seven swordsmen like Zabuza. I've heard of Raiga, Haku stated with a soft tone. Zabuza said he was a very skilled shinobi, but didn't have any other kind things to say about him. Raiga was the same way, Rinmara said with a small chuckle. He hated every member of the seven swordsmen of the Mist. That's kind of how Zabuza is. He didn't like many of them, but he respected a few of them for their abilities. He didn't really like a few who had swords that were more special than the person, like Kisame Hoshigaki. Rinmara's eyes hardened a bit. Raiga spoke of him. He hated Kisame the most. Same with Zabuza. Haku nodded. Zabuza said that Kisame's sword is the only reason Kisame is so powerful. Zabuza said that without that sword, Kisame has very few talents of his own. Apparently, Kisame's sword takes an opponent's chakra and gives it to him to increase his own power. That's why Kisame has so much chakra, and is so strong. Did he feel that way about Raiga too? Rinmara asked. Haku turned his head with a curious look on his face. Raiga's swords produced, controlled, and even summoned lightning. Raiga's main source of power came from his swords too. No, I'm not sure actually. When he spoke of Raiga, it didn't sound like he hated him as much as Kisame. When Zabuza spoke of Kisame, it was nothing besides anger and hatred in his tone. I may have to ask him about that next time. Renmara smiled, then looked over his shoulder at Haku. He could feel a bond with the girly boy, and felt safe around him, just like with Jiraiya. So what is Zabuza doing for the rebels exactly? Renmara asked. He's taking inventory of their weapons, Haku answered while laughing. I swear, he's crazy about weapons. That's what he wanted to look at first, was how many weapons they had. He sometimes scares me with his weapon fetish. Renmara started laughing at the choice of words. Haku smiled, then joined Renmara and started laughing too. Haku continued walking around the base for nearly an hour, both he and Renmara talking to each other until the latter finally drifted off to sleep. Haku made his way back to Renmara's room and set the boy down in bed, tucked him in, then exited quietly. Outside of the boy's room, Zabuza waited with his arms crossed. Yes, Zabuza-sama, Haku asked. These guys need a lot of supplies, the swordsman muttered. Would you be willing to head out with a few others to get some weapons and supplies tomorrow morning? Of course, Haku replied with a nod. Who will I be going with? Zabuza held up a piece of paper. Haku walked up and read a list of only 3 people, him being one of them. The other 2 were Shizune, Ino, and Tenten. He didn't know any of those 3. How'd they choose this group? According to that Nagato guy, they picked you to get more acquainted with more people in this group. This Shizune girl was assigned because you all need an adult escort, and this Tenten is apparently knows her weapons. And this Ino, apparently she's becoming irritable, so they're using this as an excuse to get her outside of the base for a while. Haku rolled his eyes. Great. I get to deal with an angry girl. This should be fun. Zabuza placed his hand on Haku's shoulder. Get some sleep, kid. You'll have to wake up early tomorrow morning. Haku bowed his head a bit, then walked down the hall, giving one last backwards glance over his shoulder. Zabuza watched the boy for a second before walking the opposite direction. Time passed quickly in the village, and before anyone knew it, the day of the Chunin exams. Yahiko escorted his students to the building where the first part of the exams would take place. The orange-haired shinobi sighed, looking around carefully to make sure they weren't being watched. Yahiko stopped in front of the fence surrounding the building, then turned to Naruto, Neji, and Kiba. All right, this is it. Yahiko knelt down in front of the boys, looking each of them in the eye, except Neji, whose eyes were covered. Just remember, at this point it doesn't matter if you win or lose, Yahiko whispered. We've got a lot of info about the layout of the village already. Still, try to get as far as you can. You could learn a lot from the exams alone. So you want us to do our best so that we can improve ourselves? Naruto questioned. Did you hit your head, Yahiko? No, I just figured if you grow with the Chunin exams, then maybe you could be more tolerable. Yahiko cracked a smirk, then ruffled Naruto's hair. Go knock 'em dead, kids. Yahiko walked down towards the street, the 3 boys turning to watch him leave. All right, who's ready to flunk a test? Kiba asked with false enthusiasm. Naruto whirled his head around, eyes nearly bulging out of his head. Wait, like a written test? That's what the first exam is, Neji replied calmly. Come on, we'll worry about how you 2 can cheat off me later. The young Hyuga walked forward with his 2 spiky-haired comrades following behind him. As they entered the room where they were meant to take the test, Naruto and Kiba were shocked to see how many other shinobi there were. Most of them were a few years older and looked more like thugs and murderers rather than genin. Without fear, Neji walked forward and sat down at the closest table. Naruto and Kiba swiftly followed behind him. Naruto and Kiba couldn't shake the chills they got from the entire classroom glaring at them like they had some sort of longtime grudge. Neji, however, pretended to remain oblivious, and frankly wasn't frightened by the other genin in the room. Neji turned his head a bit to the right, then elbowed Naruto. Hey, your girlfriend is coming this way, Neji whispered. Naruto blushed then looked up, seeing Sakura walking towards them. Naruto's jaw dropped a bit when he noticed Sakura's hair was now only shoulder length. Sakura sat down with Dosu and Zaku across from Naruto and his team. Hey guys, Sakura said. Kiba turned to Sakura's team, needing a distraction from the glaring room of Genin. Hey Sakura, Kiba replied quickly. Whoa, what happened to your hair? Naruto reached behind Neji and smacked Kiba in the back of his head. Ow, what was that for? Sakura blushed a bit then gently touched her hair. My uncle suggested I should cut it for the Chunin exams, Sakura admitted. He said long hair is basically a distraction and could get in my way while fighting for my life. Yeah, but your uncle's hair is longer than yours now, Zaku exclaimed. So he doesn't have any right to judge, does he? Except he replied he doesn't fight anymore, and I wanted my hair longer like his, but cutting hair is not one of Uncle Higure's strong suits. Sakura and Zaku looked over at Dosu who stared back at them. What? It's strange that I know how to cut hair. Just a bit, Zaku bluntly replied. Dosu rolled his eye then looked at Kiba. The young Inuzuka stared back with a blank look on his face. You could probably use a good comb. Seriously, what is it with you and hair? Zaku snapped. It's weird, man. We all have our vices. And I thought yours was covering your face to look like a freaking mummy. I had no idea you were into hair styling. Dosu quickly shot his arm across Sakura's face, quickly flicking Zaku's cheek with the back of his hand. Zaku growled then stood up along with Dosu. The two shot their arms over Sakura's head, but were suddenly stopped. Both looked down, seeing that they were now being held in place by the annoyed Sakura. Sit! Sakura shouted, pulling down on their arms. The boys were jerked back down into their seats. Sakura pulled their arms towards the other, causing the boys' heads to move together as well. Down. Sakura placed her hands on the back of each boy's head, then slammed their faces into the table. The kunoichi then folded her arms across her chest as Zaku and Dosu's heads bounced off the table and fell backwards out of their seats. Naruto, Kiba, and Neji all stared with slack-jawed expressions. Sakura looked up at them then immediately started laughing bashfully. Sorry about that. It's just that sometimes I have to play referee with those two. I know exactly how you feel, Neji replied. Naruto and Kiba snapped their heads at Neji who simply smirked. It's not an easy job. The two spiky-haired boys were ready to pounce on Neji, but the young Hyuga quickly grabbed them by the collars of their shirts then slammed their faces into the table, just like Sakura did. The kunoichi winced a bit as Kiba and Naruto fell backwards out of their seats. I understand what you have to go through every day. Are they okay? Sakura asked, leaning forward to look at them. Zaku and Dosu groaned, slowly getting back up to their seats. Give them a few minutes, Neji replied with a cocky smirk on his face. Across the room, Hinata, Sasuke, and Shino entered the class. They looked around, and no other genin dared look back at them. Hinata scanned the room, then saw a familiar head of pink hair. A sinister smirk formed across her lips as she walked towards Sakura's table with her teammates following behind her. Hey Sakura, Hinata called out. The pink-haired kunoichi groaned and slumped forward. Neji's face hardened, immediately recognizing his cousin. Luckily she didn't recognize him, and was only focused on torturing Sakura. Who's your friend here? His name is Hazashi, Sakura muttered. Go away Hinata. That's a stupid name, Hinata said, looking up at the blind boy. He can't even see. How the hell is he gonna pass the Chunin exams? I may be blind, but I don't need to see to tell you're annoying. Sakura smirked, moving her eyes over her shoulder to look at the now ticked-off Hinata. Zaku and Dosu snickered quietly, waiting to see what had happened next. So what, you have the cliché super hearing because you're blind or something? Cliché? That's a bit of a big word for someone like you, isn't it? Hinata's eyes narrowed on Neji. Actually I'm the heiress of the Hyuga clan, you piece of trash. You should try showing me some respect. The Hyuga clan, Neji replied with mock enthusiasm. Aren't they famous for kissing your Hokage's ass, and in doing so replace their honor with sheer bloodthirst and ruthlessness? Hardly. We're one of the most powerful clans in the world. We kiss up to no one. Not the way I heard it, Neji replied with a mocking tone. Hinata scowled, then opened her mouth to reply, but stopped herself. The young Hyuga heiress was baffled when she laid eyes on a spiky, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy climbing up from the ground. A blush immediately formed across her face as the boy sat in his chair. That hurt, Naruto murmured, rubbing his forehead in pain. Well, if you'd grow up I wouldn't have to play referee between you and Fang. Naruto groaned, then looked up at Hinata, who was blushing furiously. Who's this? This is Hinata Hyuga, Neji replied, throwing his hand out. She's the heiress to the Hyuga clan. Naruto's eyes widened with shock. He put two and two together on the one-sided relationship they had. Why don't you introduce me? Hinata suggested. Sasuke and Shino looked at Hinata, then at each other. Hinata never tripped over her words. If I tell you his name, will you leave? Neji asked. Not a chance, Hinata replied, boldly walking around the table and towards the blonde. With a hunk like this, why would I walk away? Neji and Sakura's faces twisted with disgust while Naruto simply looked at Hinata awkwardly. What's your name? I'm Ryu, Naruto answered. Now that's a nice name, Hinata said as she placed a hand on Naruto's chest. Fierce, strong. The blonde started to blush with embarrassment before looking towards Sakura. He was expecting her to be angry, disgusted, or, hopefully, jealous. Sakura was neither of these things. Instead, the kunoichi had a hand over her mouth to keep herself from dying with laughter. To her, the sight of the proud, arrogant, bitchy, and stern Hinata Hyuga flirting like a schoolgirl with anyone was a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle to behold. Naruto looked back at Hinata, growing increasingly uneasy. You know, being the heiress to a powerful clan, I can choose whomever I want to be my spouse. Neji quickly moved his hand over his mouth to keep laughter from escaping. Sakura's face was already red as she looked over at the brunette, then up at the flirting Hyuga. I'm flattered, really, but I'm already engaged. Neji's head snapped around and Sakura's jaw dropped. Naruto immediately regretted his spur-of-the-moment idea. Hinata glared at Naruto, trying to figure out if he was lying or not. Really? Yep. I'm betrothed to a girl back home, Naruto lied, trying to keep a straight face. And you won't dump her for me? The heiress to the Hyuga clan, and the hottest girl in all of Konoha. Sorry, but I love my fiancé too much, Naruto replied slowly, trying not to trip over his words. Hinata rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Alright, but just remember. You could have all of this. Hinata turned and walked away with a bewildered Sasuke and Shino following behind her. Naruto heaved forward as he let out a prolonged sigh. Engaged, huh? Neji replied, unable to fight the smirk that rested on his face. Sakura looked at the blind genin, then up at Naruto. I couldn't think of anything else to say, the blonde whispered. It just sort of came out. So, you're not engaged? Sakura questioned. Good God, no, Naruto exclaimed. I just wanted the creeper to get away from me. Sakura giggled as she felt an overwhelming feeling of relief wash over her. That was perhaps the funniest thing I have ever seen, Zaku finally said. The boy was watching Hinata's team walking away before turning around. You blind guy, completely told her off, and you, Sakura's boyfriend, completely rejected her. Sakura immediately punched Zaku in the arm. Ow, what was that for? He is not my boyfriend. Sure, Dosu murmured. It's okay, Neji replied. We tease Ryu about Sakura being his girlfriend all the time. She's not my girlfriend, Naruto snapped, unable to contain the blush on his face. Listen up, maggots. All heads snapped towards the front of the room. There was a man with scars all over his face, and cold eyes that seemed to bore through everyone in the room at once. I am Ibiki and I will be your proctor for the first part of the Chunin exams. So everyone listen up, I'm only gonna say this once. Orochimaru stood outside of the gates to the Forest of Death, leaning against the sign that read, Forest of Death, with a booklet in his hands. The pale Sannin had his eyes narrowed as he scanned the contents of the book before he sensed someone landing before him. You know, you kind of look like Kakashi in that pose. Orochimaru smiled evilly and chuckled as he snapped the book shut, seeing his former student, Anko, standing across from him. What are you doing here? I'm on specific orders from Danzo-sama. I'm supposed to go into the Forest of Death during the second stage and find a few new recruits for my projects. Anko narrowed her eyes on her former sensei. You're the proctor for said exam, aren't you? That must be a big responsibility for you. To think not too long ago you were just that little girl who I took as my student. You remember your initiation, don't you? Kill the other two students, Anko replied with an even tone, keeping her eyes dead on her sensei. She didn't even dare to blink while in his presence. What type of experiments are you testing for? Oh, you know, just the basics. New jutsus, ways to enhance one's capabilities, curse marks. Anko tensed at the last two words. Orochimaru simply chuckled, knowing he struck a nerve with his former student. Danzo wanted me to tell you that I may be taking a few of the second stage genin out of the exam to benefit me. That's not a problem, is it? Anko stepped towards her former sensei until she stood deathly close in front of him. Orochimaru simply continued smiling while Anko looked him dead in the eye. If you do anything with my students, if you so much as touch a hair on their heads, I'll make sure you pay. I don't care if you're Danzo's personal crony, you hurt Sakura, Zaku, or Dosu, I'll find a way to make you suffer. Got it? Orochimaru closed his eyes and chuckled with amusement. The Sannin snapped his eyes open, gazing deep into Anko's. The Jonin suddenly fell to her knees, the air around her growing heavy. Anko reached back and placed a hand over her throbbing curse mark. Orochimaru knelt down and stroked Anko's cheek soothingly. Dear Anko, it seems you've forgotten my hold over you. You could never hurt me in this lifetime. Although I'd like to see you try, even if you got close to it, my curse mark will make sure that you stay down. Anko scowled, attempting to bite her sensei's hand. Orochimaru quickly pulled his cold hand away, chuckling with amusement before standing up. Danzo gave me direct orders to oversee the Forest of Death during the second stage. If you do anything to stop the exams, you'll have to speak with him, not me. Anko drew in a quick breath, feeling the pressure of her curse mark released. The Jonin stood up, glaring daggers at Orochimaru. Still, your students don't interest me anymore. That Abumi boy had potential at one point, but he lost it, same with Dosu. But, that leaves Sakura Haruno on your team. Perhaps she has potentials I could unlock. Anko grinned then started laughing. Orochimaru turned with a faint look of curiosity in his eyes. What's so funny? If I try to stop the second stage or mess with you, I'll have to deal with Danzo, right? Who do you think you'll have to deal with if you so much as touch Sakura? Orochimaru's eyes narrowed a bit, his golden eyes glinting. Anko looked directly into her sensei's eyes. Go ahead and try to mess with her. I dare you. Orochimaru scoffed, a smirk crossing his lips once again. You're a cocky little sport, aren't you? The Sannin turned around then started to walk away from Anko. We'll just see where the exams go, shall we? With that, the sinister Sannin vanished from sight. Anko glared at the empty space before turning back around. In the Forest of Death, Sakura, Zaku, and Dosu raced through the treetops at full speed. Man, that test sucked, Zaku exclaimed. Glad that blonde kid yelled at the proctor and got all of us to pass, otherwise I think I would have failed us. That doesn't surprise me, Dosu murmured. Sakura's eyes seemed distant, something her teammates noticed. What's wrong, Sakura? The pink-haired Kunoichi blinked then looked over at her comrades. It's just. Does anyone else find it weird that Anko-sensei handed just both a heaven and earth scroll? An image flashed through everyone's mind of when Anko pulled them aside and gave the trio both a heaven and earth scroll. She wanted us to pass, Zaku replied. Big deal, right? We get to pass and head to the third stage. I'm not complaining. Besides, it's not the first time Anko-sensei let us slip under the radar, right? Maybe not, but she knows that if she's caught that the punishment could mean she would be stripped of her status or even killed depending on Danzo's mood, Dosu said. And Anko wouldn't want us to just slip through the cracks on something this important. I gotta agree with Sakura. Something's up. Anko-sensei said we should wait a couple of days before showing up to avoid suspicion, so we should find a small isolated spot to camp out. Are you kidding? Zaku snapped. We should be jumping from place to place. Screw hiding in one spot. We don't know if any of those other ninjas are tracker ninjas or not. We can't take our chances of being ambushed at night and killed. Or worse, for some of us, Sakura narrowed her eyes on Dosu. The hunched-over boy averted his eye, whistling innocently. Yeah, haha, I could get raped. I'd like to see somebody try it. Hey, I just thought of something. What if we run into Hinata's team? We could totally beat the crap out of them. Yeah, Sakura agreed, slamming her fist into her opposite palm. Hey, I'm for that as much as the next guy, but maybe we should wait that out. 3-on-3 aren't exactly fair odds in this case. I'd rather take on those three separately. Oh, you killjoy, Zaku muttered. The three genin shot through the treetops, towards the center of the forest. Hinata, Sasuke, and Shino were already in a small clearing in the forest, having a camp set up. I think we should be looking for a scroll first, Sasuke said, glaring up at Hinata. Please, we're the most skilled team in the entire forest. Besides, we've got the plan worked out right. As soon as some idiotic goons show up, we'll spring the trap. Shino, have your little scouts found said goons? Not yet, Shino replied. It would probably help if we moved deeper into the forest. Most of the other teams wanted to get as close to the tower as possible. That way once they get 2 scrolls they won't have to make such a long trek through the forest. Yeah, but if we head deeper into the forest, then we have to dismantle the other trap we set up at the end of camp, and reassemble it wherever we go next. It's just easier to wait for some idiot to come to us. In the treetops above, 3 genin watched the Konoha team. The fools, one of them whispered. Find the trap, and take them out, a second one whispered. Found them, Shino whispered. Sasuke stood up, looking into the treetops. Bring them out, the Uchiha ordered. I feel like having a little warm-up to get my blood flowing. Shino nodded once. Without a single movement from the Aburame boy, 3 genin shot out of the treetops, being thrown to the ground by swarms of bugs. The genin landed with a heavy thud. Hinata crossed her arms and pouted. Man, and I really wanted to do my plan, the Hyuga heiress stated. Sasuke cracked his knuckles as he approached the genin from Takigakure. Get ready, one genin shouted. The 3 pulled out different weapons, one a short blade, the other a ball and chain, and the third 2 curved sickles. Can I play too? Hinata asked with an eager smile on her face. Sure. Just stay out of my way though, Sasuke replied. What about you, Shino? I'll sit this one out, the boy replied, staring at the Taki genin. I call the 2 on the right, Hinata shouted, shooting forward. Sasuke huffed then vanished in a blur. Hinata sprung forward and twirled to the side as the boy with the short blade attempted to strike her. The Hyuga heiress slid across the ground while the boy with the sickles charged. Hinata smirked then stepped back, ducking and weaving under each strike. Hinata finally threw her hand upward, knocking one of the weapons out of the boy's hand. The boy gasped with shock as he looked at Hinata, who grinned as she thrusted her palm forward, striking the boy in the center of the chest with a small burst of chakra blowing out of his back. The boy froze for a moment before he coughed up a mouthful of blood. He fell onto his knees, then on his side in a lifeless heap. Hinata smirked as she looked down at the boy, shaking her hand out a bit. The second boy screamed with rage as he swung at Hinata's head. The Hyuga Eris duck then struck the boy in the hip, dislocating his leg and fracturing the bone. The boy cried out with pain then fell on his back. Sasuke pulled his head back as the ball weight on the chain flew by, narrowly missing his nose. The Uchiha threw his leg up, catching it on the chain. The other genin smirked then pulled back on the chain, bringing Sasuke towards him. The Konoha genin huffed then slammed his hands into the ground to slow himself down. Sasuke then threw his leg forward, connecting his foot with the boy's face. The Taki genin flew backwards. Sasuke pulled his leg forward, slipping it through the chain before the boy even hit the ground. Is that all you've got? Sasuke asked with a bored tone. The boy growled angrily before twirling the chain above his head. He threw the weight forward, and the ball shattered like glass. Sasuke's eyes widened a bit as sharp arrows of water shot towards him. The young Uchiha quickly made a series of hand signs then exhaled a wave of fire, which evaporated the water arrows. Sasuke stopped his jutsu, then glared angrily at the now surprised boy across from him. The boy then smirked then jumped back, spinning his chain around again. Not bad, but let's see you stop this. Water style. Acid rain. The boy threw the second weight high into the air. He clasped his hands together with the chain in the middle, and funneled his chakra towards the weight. The metal ball exploded above Sasuke, raining down hundreds of tiny droplets of water. Sasuke narrowed his eyes then quickly rushed towards the other genin. The drops of water started pelting the dirt, sizzling and smoking upon impact. Sasuke moved faster, but a few drops hit him regardless. The boy cried out with pain as the acid burned through his clothes and skin, and then screamed with agony as he soon melted away. The Taki genin chuckled to himself before spinning his chain around his arms. The boy turned around with a smile, but gasped when he saw Sasuke glaring back at him. The Uchiha struck his opponent before the other could strike. The genin landed in a puddle of acid, then began screaming and writhing in pain as his own jutsu started to eat away at him. Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and huffed again before walking away, leaving his opponent to die. Hinata was sitting on the only living enemy, who was now tied up with his hands behind his back. Bad news, champ, Hinata replied, tossing an earth scroll to him. They got the same scroll as us. Whatever, Sasuke replied, throwing the scroll back in the injured boy's face. Let's just do your stupid idea. Maybe we can find someone who will fall for it. Sounds like a plan, Hinata replied, jumping off of the boy. But what should we do about him? Some wild animal will most likely come along and eat him, Shino said as he knelt down in front of the boy, once they catch the scent of blood. Shino pulled out a kunai then cut the boy's cheek. The bug boy stood up then turned to his teammates. Let's go. Hinata and Sasuke nodded and the three were off. Less than a minute later, the Taki boy could hear the growling of a feral beast in the woods. In a valley above the rebels' hideout, Zabuza stood in front of a tree with his arms crossed, watching Haku intently as he cried out and shouted as he swung around two katanas in his hands. Zabuza wore a black tank top with his sword embedded in the ground next to him, with Haku's shirt hanging from the handle. The black-haired boy was sweating due to hours of practicing, and his hair fell down in strands from the sweat. Faster, Zabuza ordered. Haku stepped back, pulling both blades towards his body then struck forward quicker than before. Good. Now finish your opponent. Haku stepped back 2 paces, one sword held straight up in front of him, and the other pulled back with the blade pointing forward. Haku charged forward and stabbed forward with one blade. The black-haired boy pulled the blade back then swung the second sword sideways, spun around and swung with both swords. Haku then twirled the blades then made an X with them high above his head before slashing them both apart. Not bad, Zabuza admitted. Not bad, he was great. Haku and Zabuza looked over, seeing someone pulled back into the bushes. There was some whispering and then silence. Zabuza glanced at Haku, who chuckled nervously before sighing. I'll go deal with it, the boy said, walking towards the bush. During his approach, Haku sheathed his swords on his back before getting to the bush. Haku looked behind the plant, seeing Tenten and Ino squatting behind it, smiling sheepishly up at the boy. Hi, Ino replied with a quick wave. You two have got to stop this, Haku sighed out. Why can't we watch you train? Ino asked. Haku looked over at Tenten, who immediately held her hands up in defense. Don't look at me, I'm keeping an eye on her, not you. Oh, you're so full of it, Tenten. You said that nothing turns you on more than a man who knows how to handle weapons. The brunette blushed and glared at Ino while Haku groaned with frustration. Listen, can you two please just leave me alone right now? Zabuza-sama doesn't like people watching or interrupting our training sessions. Fine, Ino replied with an exaggerated sigh. The two kunoichi stood up, looking over at Zabuza as they walked off. To their surprise, the man didn't seem too horribly upset. Ino was bold enough to dare a wave towards the swordsman. Zabuza simply nodded in response. The two girls then looked to each other and shrugged before walking out of sight. Please forgive that interruption, Zabuza-sama, Haku replied as he spun around on his heels and bowed. It won't happen again, I hope. It's fine, Zabuza answered, still looking down the trail the two girls walked down. I'm surprised you're such a ladies' man though, Haku. Seeing as how you look like one to begin with. Gee, thanks a lot, Haku replied sarcastically. Zabuza smirked under his mask, then tossed Haku his shirt. Come on, break time. Haku smiled, then put his shirt on as Zabuza pulled his sword out of the ground and placed it on his back. The two walked through the forest towards a nearby stream. Haku looked up, seeing two birds flying through the trees, one chasing the other. The boy simply smiled as he watched the two animals play. Zabuza looked at his ward, then followed his gaze up to the birds. It always amazed Zabuza how Haku managed to find beauty in some of the simplest things. Ever since they joined the rebels, Zabuza decided to be more lenient on Haku. He knew that by joining this group of renegades that it would put the tracker ninja from Kiri off his trail for a while at least. Plus they had more allies to help them if the tracker ninja ever found them. The two finally arrived at the small stream. Haku quickly knelt down, then splashed his face with water. The boy sighed with relief before shaking his head to get the water out of his hair. Zabuza simply walked knee-high into the stream. Haku fell backwards, holding himself up by his hands. So, does this rogue group actually have a name? Haku asked. Zabuza turned his head around with a curious look in his eyes. I'm just wondering. I mean, I haven't heard an official title yet, and I figure due to your high status some of the leaders in this group have talked to you. I haven't heard, Zabuza replied laughingly. Haku smirked in response as his master turned back around. You think a name would make us more formidable? It'd be better than that one group of rogues, wouldn't it? Zabuza chuckled, then shook his head. Haku took in a small breath as he looked up to the sky. Ow! Naruto shouted before slapping his neck with an earth scroll. Stupid bugs. Shut up, will ya? Kiba snarled. We don't know who could be watching us right now. And don't use the scroll as a bug squasher. Please. Between your nose and his eyes, there's no way anyone could sneak up on us. Naruto growled, then swung the scroll at another bug buzzing around in his face. He's right, Neji stated casually. However, we should still be as quiet as possible. Alright, Naruto agreed quietly. So what's the first order of business? Setting up camp, right? We should look for other teams first, Neji replied. If we can find another team quickly enough and move on to the next round, then there's no reason to set up a camp we won't use. Once it starts getting later towards the night, we'll set up a camp. Kiba, you're the tracker of the team, so you'll be on point. Naruto, you'll be taking the middle, and I the rear. Alright, let's head out, Kiba shouted before he and the rest of the team shot into the treetops. Kiba landed in a hunched-over position, sniffing the air carefully. Naruto and Neji landed on either side of the young Inuzuka. Kiba's eyes scanned the entire area, as if to follow the trail of the scents. Well, it smells like there are 3 or 4 teams nearby. I can hardly tell how strong their chakras are individually. It's all sort of a big blur to my nose. Well, tell your nose to focus, Naruto snapped. We don't want to run into someone with a crazy amount of chakra. Says the Jinchuriki of the group, Kiba shot back smugly. He can't show his chakra to anyone, Neji sniped. If he does, then our cover is blown, and just about everyone in our group will kill us if we survive. Just pick the weakest scent of chakra and we'll scout them out. Kiba nodded, then turned his head to the left, sniffing twice before his eyes snapped open with shock. What is it? An entire team of genin was just wiped out. What? Naruto questioned. Who did it? I don't know, Kiba replied. There's no chakra signature of any kind. In fact, there's no scent at all. It's like the team just disappeared. Maybe it's a technique of theirs, Neji suggested. There are various types of countermeasures people have developed to outsmart tracker ninja. But how are they supposed to figure out someone's tracking them with their nose and not by sensing them with chakra? Kiba asked, his temper flaring a bit. I don't know, but regardless, I don't like it either way. But I still don't think we should give into crazy superstitions like a ghost took out the genin or something. Just pick the next team. Kiba sighed, then turned his nose in the other direction and began sniffing. This way, the young Inuzuka said quietly. Kiba shot forward, followed by a worrying Naruto, and an unfazed Neji. Deeper in the forest, a figure wearing nothing but a trench coat and mask, with short hair stood before 3 genin corpses. In the figure's hand, a heaven scroll. This should be good enough for now. The man let his hand fall by his side, then vanished in the blink of an eye. Sakura, Dosu, and Zaku landed in a clearing and looked at the surrounding area. Zaku groaned as he threw his head back and ran his hands through his hair in a rage. Damn it! There were almost 100 other people coming to the second stage. How freaking big is this forest? Keep yelling and I think someone will find us, Dosu stated. Good. I want someone to find us. Someone to fight with or something too. Help. Someone help me. The 3 turned their heads to the sound of the voice. The bushes in said direction began to rustle a bit before Hinata came bursting out. Help. Oh, help me, oh damn it. It's you 3. Man, and I was ready to help some pretty woman, Zaku sighed, placing his hands on his hips while shaking his head. And it turns out that it's just you. Oh, stop it, you're gonna make me cry. I'll be. The ice princess can feel emotions other than pure feral bitchiness, Dosu snapped. Hinata frowned heavily while glaring at Dosu. Why don't you run along with your other 2 teammates? I'm sure they'd love to brood while you bitch. Suddenly, Shino appeared behind Zaku and Sasuke behind Dosu. Zaku ducked under Shino's strike, and then used the air tubes in his hands to launch himself back into the young Aburame. Shino cried out as Zaku slammed into him, then smashed him between the boy and the ground. Zaku rolled back off of Shino and into a combat-ready stance. Dosu raised his arm to block Sasuke's kick. Unfortunately, it wasn't the arm carrying his sound device. Dosu used his other hand to brace his arm, managing to hold his ground against Sasuke's strike. The young Uchiha placed his foot on the ground, then shot back as Dosu swung his left arm. Sasuke slid across the ground and threw a pair of kunai. Dosu raised his arm, deflecting the shuriken off of his device. We don't have the scroll you're looking for, Sakura shouted, turning mainly towards Sasuke. Worry about yourself. Sakura turned around to see Hinata right in her face. The pink-haired Kunoichi yanked her head back as Hinata's palm narrowly missed her face. Sakura swung her leg around, knocking Hinata's arm out of the way. The Hyuga heiress stumbled as Sakura came around, then slammed her fist against Hinata's face. The young, blue-haired girl cried out, then stumbled away, rubbing the corner of her mouth a bit. Hinata looked at her blood that stained the back of her hand, then glared up angrily at Sakura. You're going to regret that, bitch. Hinata's Byakugan flared as she rushed forward. Great. Sakura muttered to herself. The pink-haired kunoichi sprung into the air as Hinata struck forward. Sakura smiled deviously as she pulled out a kunai, threw it past Hinata and cut a nearby rope. Hinata looked over with confusion before looking back up, seeing an entire tree falling straight down on her. Hinata snarled, then thrusted her palm upward, striking the bottom of the massive log. Chakra quickly spearheaded its way through the wood, splitting it perfectly down the middle. Sakura landed on the inside of one of the halves of the log, running down it as she threw a kunai with a paper bomb at Hinata. The Hyuga heiress saw this with her Byakugan, then quickly spun around. Rotation. Hinata's chakra barrier ate away at the bottoms of the logs. The kunai struck the barrier and exploded. While the rotation saved Hinata from any damage, it interrupted her spinning. The chakra quickly faded away as Hinata spun around, facing Sakura as she closed in from the log. Sakura threw 4 shuriken forward. Hinata held her stance, but simply moved her upper body back and forth between the throwing stars. Sakura pulled out another kunai, raising her arm up to her chest in preparation. Hinata thrusted her palm forward with a brief cry. Sakura flipped over Hinata, landing behind the Hyuga heiress before striding forward to take a swing at her. Hinata ducked, pivoted around Sakura, then thrusted her fingers into Sakura's side. The kunoichi cried out, and was quickly engulfed in a cloud of smoke. Hinata's eyes widened with fury as a log appeared out of the smoke. Suddenly, a kunai with a paper bomb attached struck the wood with a dull thunk. Hinata gasped before the bomb went off. Sakura slid down the base of a nearby tree. As soon as her feet hit the ground, she looked up at the cloud of smoke. Hinata skidded out of the smoke, eyes focused directly on Sakura. The pink-haired kunoichi couldn't help but fight the smirk that formed across her lips. Hinata merely glared at the annoying kunoichi. Dosu flipped backwards as 3 kunai flew past his body. Still standing on his hand, Dosu looked up and saw Sasuke flashing in front of him. Dosu brought his lower body around, his feet barely skidding against the ground, before he threw both feet up at the young Uchiha's face. Sasuke pulled his head back. Dosu's feet narrowly missed Sasuke's nose. The young Uchiha grabbed Dosu's feet, spun around, and then hurled the boy across the clearing. Dosu landed on his hands, and quickly rolled forward into a bush. Sasuke walked towards the bush. A quick, thin, snapping noise was heard. Several rounds of kunai flew out of the bush and shot towards Sasuke. The young Uchiha growled as he jumped backwards, flipped back on his hands, sprung into the air, and landed on his feet. Sasuke threw his bangs out of his face, looking forward at the bush Dosu hid in, and was shocked to see 2 more kunai coming at him. Sasuke raised his arms over his face to shield himself. 1 kunai struck in the boy's arm, and the second in his gut. Sasuke groaned and kneeled over in pain, quickly pulling the kunai out of his gut. He threw the knife to the side and looked up to see Dosu's fist moments before connecting to his face. Sasuke hit the ground face first. Dosu chuckled menacingly and raised his device up to the side of his head, then gently flicked it with his finger. A soft ringing sound moved through the air and into Sasuke's ears. 1 down, Dosu told himself. Sasuke quickly threw the other kunai, formerly stuck in his arm, at Dosu. The hunched-over boy quickly raised his arm up and deflected the blade with the device. Dosu scowled as the sound his device emanated was distorted. Damn it! Sasuke quickly flipped to his feet, keeping his stance calm. Don't tell me he knows how to disrupt my jutsu. That's just my freaking luck. Zaku ducked under Shino's strike, then threw his fist forward. Shino pulled his head to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow before jabbing his fist towards Zaku's stomach. The young Abumi pulled his stomach back, gasping with a raspy tone. Shino huffed, then threw his fist across Zaku's face. The boy stumbled around, before looking at Shino. Alright, you're annoying, you know that. Shino made no response. Zaku's side then shook his head. Whatever, screw it. The boy slammed his hands through the dirt, blasting air through the ground. Zaku quickly pulled his hands out of the ground, grabbed a kunai, and then threw the blade up in the air. Shino watched the blade, but cried out as the ground fell out beneath his feet. Shino hit the bottom of a pit with a grunt. The kunai Zaku threw, sliced through a rope to another log that fell towards the ground. Shino looked up, realizing that the size of the hole was large enough for the log to crush him. The log smashed into the pit, sending dust flying outward. Zaku simply rubbed the tip of his pinky inside of his ear casually, then flicked the wax off before walking away. The boy stopped, then looked back at the log sticking out of the hole in the ground. I swear, that is the most sexually suggestive trap in the world. Suddenly, the log was being eaten by a swarm of black bugs. Zaku rolled his eyes and groaned. Shino soon jumped out of the pit, clothes slightly tattered and dirtied. Zaku and Shino simply looked at one another, the former looking rather casual. No hard feelings, right? Shino cried out as he threw his arm forward, millions of bugs shooting out of his sleeve. Zaku threw his hands forward, blasting the bugs back before he ran further back. They set up traps in this area, Shino shouted. We noticed, Hinata snapped, flipping backwards before two shuriken from Sakura threatened to strike her. Looks like we were the ones who walked into a trap, Sasuke stated. That's right, little man, Dosu replied venomously. And it's only gonna get worse. The hunched-over ninja got ready to charge, but he and Sasuke both were thrown back by a powerful gust of wind. Zaku and Shino looked over upon hearing the wind, but they both jumped apart when a strange, repetitive clicking noise was heard. A bizarre creature in a black, tattered cloak threw 6 arms outward, launching 4 kunai in Shino and Zaku's directly. Zaku used his slicing sound wave to stop the blades, while Shino used his bugs to do the same. Sakura looked past Hinata, eyes filled with shock and confusion. The Hyuga heiress found no need to turn around before she sprung forward next to Sakura. The two kunoichi looked dead ahead, seeing a wave of sand pulling backwards and into the gourd of a short boy with red hair, along with his 2 partners, a woman with blonde hair and 4 ponytails, and a boy wearing all black and face paint. Oh great, Sakura muttered, looking over to her side instinctively. Hinata returned the glance and the two quickly sprung away from one another. Hinata got ready to strike, but another wave of sand flying towards her captured her attention. The Hyuga heiress sprung into the air and landed on a tree branch. It's rude to interrupt a lady, Hinata snapped. Especially when she's fighting. The red-headed boy simply moved his eyes up at Hinata. Go away and we'll deal with you and your team next, little boy. You obviously don't know who you're dealing with, the taller boy in black stated. Apparently you've never heard of Gaara of the desert. Sasuke's eyes snapped towards the redhead, while Hinata and Sakura looked in shock at the boy. The land of winds Jinchuriki, Hinata questioned. In the freaking Chunin exams. Against me. Could life get any better? Hinata jumped down and landed on the ground, a devious smirk crossing her lips. If I defeat a Jinchuriki, just image how much honor and glory that'll bring to my clan. Don't you mean, how much honor and glory you'll get? Dosu asked. Either or, Hinata replied with a casual shrug. Defeating a Jinchuriki could give me my own title. Like the blood-red beast, or Kakashi the silver fang. Yeah, you could be Hinata the bitchy, Zaku shouted. Or Hinata the arrogant, Dosu added. Shut up. Sasuke, Shino, you two back me up. No telling if Gaara's little friends will help or not. I do not need their assistance to deal with 6 insects, Gaara stated in a quiet and cold tone. Stay out of this, Kankuro, Tamari. You've gotta be kidding me, Kankuro snapped. That one bitch is obviously a Hyuga, and there's no telling what the others are capable of. Stay out of my way, Gaara repeated, his tone slightly more dangerous. Kankuro scowled then stepped away. If you wish to fight me, I will kill every last one of you. Bring it on, Hinata replied with a cocky smirk. Whoa, wait, she doesn't speak for us, Zaku shouted. Yeah, taking on a Jinchuriki is way down on my to-do, whoa. The two boys dove apart as two giant hands of sand threatened to grab them. Damn it, now we're in this fight too. Deal with it, Sakura shouted. I want to be the one to take little Miss Prissy Hyuga down, not some Jinchuriki. Sakura turned to her two partners then screamed, this is a stupid idea. Agreed, Zaku replied before running towards the edge of the clearing. Suddenly, Tamari sprung forward, standing between Zaku and freedom. Oh crap, the girl swung her fan quicker than Zaku could raise his hands up, throwing the boy back into the center of the clearing. I take it we're not going anywhere. Then you'll die, Gaara stated, his sand once again moving outward. Zaku rolled onto his hands then shot back as the sand smashed a hole in the ground. Anko was knelt down in front of three genin corpses, inspecting them curiously. Anko-san, a voice called out. The Jonin turned her head as a squad of Anbu landed around her. We got your message, is this what we're supposed to inspect? Yeah, these three genin were killed, but look around the area. The Anbu scanned the surrounding, enclosed area. They were completely surrounded by trees, which would mean there is little to no chance that a normal genin team found them. And there's no sign of a struggle. There's no way any team of kids could track these three, find them in this closed-off area, and sneak up on them. And look at the corpses. There are no wounds or anything. And I checked the bodies and there's no internal bleeding as well. Whoever killed these kids wasn't a genin. But then who? One Anbu member asked. Only genin and a select few picked by the Hokage are allowed to enter the Forest of Death during the exams. Anko's eyes snapped up as she rose to her feet. I think I have a good idea who. Anko turned around, and quickly gasped once she saw who was standing behind the Anbu. The squad spun around, and all shifted uneasily when they saw Orochimaru behind them, eyes fixated on the three corpses. Anko's look suddenly became hardened. Did you do this to these children? No, I didn't, Orochimaru replied, snapping his eyes up at Anko. If you recall, my experiments require live subjects. These children are dead, and thus would serve no purpose. I'm just as intrigued as you are as to how these three youths met their untimely demise. Orochimaru walked through the squad of Anbu then knelt down next to one of the corpses, a young girl with panic-stricken, lifeless blue eyes and soft, now dirties, brown hair. It seems as if there's a mouse hiding in our humble little forest. Whoever it is obviously not a genin. Orochimaru turned to the Anbu behind him. We're going to need more scouts in the forest. But if we were to be spotted by anyone and it got out that there were Anbu in the Forest of Death during the Chunin exams. Fine, Anko and I will scout the forest. Orochimaru rose to his feet. You all take these bodies back to the morgue and inform Danzo of a possible spy in the forest. The Anbu nodded, three of them quickly moving to take the corpses before leaving. Orochimaru turned to Anko, shall we? Orochimaru turned and took a step forward. You weren't lying, Anko stated. Orochimaru stopped, staring straight ahead with no expression. You're surprised. Even I don't kill children without reason. And even if I were to do so, I'd make sure and leave a giant mess behind. I know, Anko barely whispered. Let's split up, cover more ground. Without a response, Orochimaru vanished. Anko sighed heavily then looked out into the forest. Kids, please be safe, Anko ran forward, breaking out into a sprint before jumping into the trees. Neji, Naruto, and Kiba stood back to back in a circle with a genin lying on the ground opposite of them. Well, that was easy, Kiba exclaimed happily. What scroll do they have? Neji asked. Naruto walked up to one of the boys then searched him, pulling out an earth scroll. Sorry, they got the same one as us, Naruto answered, tossing the scroll back onto the unconscious boy. Kiba, any chance that Konoha put separate scents on the scrolls? Yeah, because I'm that freaking awesome. I'm so good that I can pick sense off of scrolls, Kiba shouted. What do you think I am? A freaking dog. Half of one at least. Kiba growled, then moved towards Naruto, who quickly moved on the other side of Neji, laughing mockingly. Guys, shut up, Neji snapped. The two spiky-haired teens froze, looking directly at Neji. The young Hyuga snapped his head around. The spiky-haired boys followed Neji's gaze to a man standing up on a tree branch, looking down on them. The man wore a black cloak, wearing a hood to disguise his face. Who is that guy? Naruto asked. He looks a little old to be a genin, Kiba whispered. I heard that, the man replied with a light-hearted tone. Remove your hood, coward, Neji commanded. Okay. The man lifted his head up and pulled his hood back, revealing an orange, spiral mask with a black hole on the left side and short, spiky black hair. Hello. Show us your face, Neji seethed. No, you told Toby to remove his hood first. Are there any cases of adult-sized 5-year-olds in the world? Kiba asked Naruto. Hey, that's mean. The man named Toby raised his hand up, showing a heaven scroll to the three boys. I guess I'll just have to keep this scroll all to myself now. A heaven scroll? Naruto and Kiba exclaimed. Neji scowled angrily, clenching his fists. Give that to us. Come and take it from Toby, the man in the orange mask shouted. Toby laughed as he quickly turned around, then shot off through the woods. Get him, Naruto shouted, leaping forward. That scroll is as good as ours, loser, Kiba screamed, chasing after Toby on all fours. Toby turned his head, looking back over his shoulder at a specific blonde. Yes, come and get me, Nine Tails.